Chapter 2164. However, this scene was clearly seen by a group of people in the distance. I didn't think that Yixian would be so strong. No, to be more precise, it's his war machines. I didn't think that he would have so many powerful war machines. It seems that I've underestimated him. These useless slaves can't even handle such a small matter. Clearly, this was the person who'd issued the order to capture Fei Yin. Fei Yin. Oh, Fei Yin, you're mine. You're mine. This person was none other than Yi Lixiu. He hadn't defeated Yi Xian yet, but he couldn't wait to get Fei Yin in advance. Especially when the family guard beside him told him that Fei Yin was a slave and a virgin at that. He couldn't wait to get his hands on her. Naturally, the slave pavilion had a special method to make Fei Yin's godhead fragment lose its effect and create a new one to control Fei Yin. This method was something that almost no slave pavilion had. However, due to the special nature of qi, very few people knew about it and rarely used it. This time, Yi Lixiu had prepared a sufficient price to obtain Fei Yin in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, he'd failed in the end. Go, pass down this prince's orders. Launch an all-out operation against that guy. War machine. I want to see how you'll deal with it in the training camp when you can't use your war machine. It wasn't that the Mozhang training camp didn't forbid the use of war machines, but the rule was that disciples could only rely on their own strength when fighting against each other. Clearly, Yi Lixiu had also set up a big game of chess, one that targeted Yi Xian. And now, he'd finally made his move. Yi Xian brought Fei Yin back to his residence. Unexpectedly, Luo Qi had followed him. At this moment, in Luo Qi's heart, Yi Xian was a super-perfect man. After finding out that Fei Yin was Yi Xian's slave, Luo Qi was stunned. Servants were more common, but slaves, to be honest, weren't that common. This was because many people would rather die than become slaves. Thus, the number of slaves was very small. Of course, if you were talking about ordinary people as slaves, there would be a lot of them. However, there were very few who were willing to become slaves after becoming gods. QWPM wants more, a strange combination like flying smoke and Yi Xian. The master wanted to get closer to the master-slave relationship, but the slave was unwilling. Is flying smoke beautiful? Very, very beautiful. As long as one had seen flying smoke's true appearance, men would fall head over heels for her. As for women, they wouldn't even be jealous of her. Was flying smoke powerful? Very powerful. In the 7th division, Fian was publicly recognized as a genius. Although her realm was not high right now, her strong learning ability and outstanding talent allowed her to be ranked on the genius ranking. However, because the light from Yi Xian was too strong, it was blocked. Moreover, Fian was even versed in many mysterious divine abilities. It could be said that flying smoke was simply perfect. However, such a perfect woman was willing to become Yi Xian's slave. For a moment, Luo Qi was even more curious about Yi Xian. Fian did not rest. Even though he had just experienced a battle and had lost a lot of energy, she did not rest for a moment. Instead, she was busy preparing food for Yi Xian. Moreover, no matter how much Yi Xian requested, Fian only smiled and did not have the slightest intention of stopping. In the end, Yi Xian also gave up. Only after watching Yi Xian eat the food that she had prepared did Fian leave with Luo Qi in satisfaction. What happened today undoubtedly gave Yi Xian a wake-up call. It made Yi Xian understand that he was not necessarily safe in the MO training camp. On the way back, Luo Qi kept asking Fian about Yi Xian. Fian was very direct. As long as it could be said, she would say everything she knew. In fact, it was obvious why a girl was inquiring about a man. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not care about Luo Qi at all. If it wasn't for the fact that Luo Qi was Fian's friend, Yi Xian probably wouldn't even look at her. This Luo Qi was actually not simple. The Luo family also had a certain amount of strength in the 100 realms of Mo Shanga, and Luo Qi was the only successor of the Luo family. One could imagine that there were definitely many people chasing after her. So what if it was the God realm? Of course, things like love between men and women were also extremely normal. After the two girls left, Yi Xian found the people from the Fire Clan. He needed to know who the slave pavilion accepted the mission from, and then went to find trouble with Fian. He wanted to catch this person and then deal with him ruthlessly. Unfortunately, this time, Yi Xian miscalculated. He couldn't find any useful information at all. It was as if that mission was only accepted by those 8 people in private. When Yi Xian received the report, he secretly snorted at the slave pavilion. Since that was the case, then don't blame Yi Xian for destroying the slave pavilion. However, before that, Yi Xian encountered trouble. "Oh, Yi Xian, get out here!" Just as Yi Xian was bored in the first section, he heard a shout outside the door. Yi Xian frowned slightly. Who was looking for him? Moreover, he was so angry. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and directly walked out. "Who are you?" Yi Xian looked at that person. He didn't know this person. It could even be said that he had never seen this person before. But why did this person come to find trouble with him? "Yi Xian, you hypocrite. Who am I? I am the brother of Han Yuan, who was defiled by you. Today, I must avenge my sister and kill you." It really is Hong Yuan's brother. Han Yuan is from the 9th section, and she looks very beautiful. I didn't expect that this Yi Xian would actually be such a pervert. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. What Han Yuan? He didn't know her at all. Yi Xian, wasn't such a person. It seemed that this person had found the wrong person. I don't know who your sister is. Moreover, Yi Xian, would never do such a despicable thing. You should leave. You found the wrong person. You found the wrong person? Of course you won't admit it. Don't worry, you'll admit it after I kill you. That person actually attacked directly. He didn't care about the training camp's rules at all. He used a killing move as soon as he attacked. At this moment, many people, including the instructors, still didn't understand what was going on. Therefore, no one was prepared at all. However, this person clearly came prepared. The moment he attacked, he summoned the phantom of a demon god. This phantom of a demon god was obviously not something that a person like him could possess. This was because the strength of this phantom had already reached the peak of the heavenly god realm. Ding! Attention, host! A powerful attack has been detected. Host, please prepare your defenses. Damn it! Chapter 2165. This was the phantom of a peak heavenly god realm demon god. That person was also a superior heavenly god. At this moment, not only did the phantom of the demon god charge towards Yi Xian, that person also charged towards him at the same time. Damn it! Yi Xian was slightly angered, but his hands were not idle. A ball of light exploded around the Godslayer, protecting Yi Xian within it. That powerful attack was blocked the moment it reached Yi Xian's side. This time, Yi Xian did not control the Godslayer. Instead, it flew out on its own. Of course, to be more precise, it was Wei Zhentian who made his move. Wei Zhentian had been residing within the Godslayer all this while. Now that Yi Xian was in danger, Wei Zhentian naturally would not ignore it. When the phantom of the demon god and the superior heavenly god charged over, Wei Zhentian did not hesitate to activate the Soul Devourer shield, blocking all of their attacks. At this moment, Yi Xian was still standing there leisurely, as if he was taking a stroll in the park. Above his head, the Godslayer emitted a faint glow, protecting Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Han Yuan's brother continued to surround Yi Xian and launch a series of fierce attacks. Of course, it was all in vain. At this moment, the surrounding people were also shocked. They were shocked that Han Yuan's brother could unleash such a powerful attack. After all, Han Yuan's brother did not have such a powerful technique in the past. At the same time, they were even more shocked by Yi Xian's defense. Ignored. He was simply ignoring such a powerful attack. To be able to withstand the attacks of a peak heavenly god realm demon god and a superior heavenly god, many people could do it. Some of them could even do it more easily than Yi Xian. However, that was because they were already very strong, surpassing Han Yuan's brother. However, Yi Xian was different. Yi Xian's strength was only at the middle stage, grand, profound stage of the first stage. In fact, a few months ago, he was just a true god. QWPM, however, it was this person who was obviously at an absolute disadvantage who was able to defend against the attack of a heavenly god who was many times more powerful than him with such ease. In such a situation, what could the surrounding onlookers say? It's that Dharma treasure, that sword, seems to be very powerful. Someone said, at this moment, the most eye-catching thing in Yi Xian's performance was the God Slayer sword. It could be said that all of this happened without Yi Xian's control. Or rather, it could be said Wei Zhentian. In the eyes of others, it was natural that they were surprised. There were many weapons or equipment. There were quite a few who could fight on their own. However, an artifact spirit was still an artifact spirit, and its flaws were very obvious. If an artifact spirit was allowed to fight on its own, its power would be greatly reduced. This was something that everyone knew. Therefore, under normal circumstances, no one would allow an artifact spirit to fight on its own unless it was absolutely necessary. But what was Yi Xian's situation now? The sword was clearly fighting on its own. How could it suppress the demon god Shadow and Hong Yuan's brother? A weapon spirit could never surpass its master's strength. This was an iron law that no one could violate. They couldn't understand it. Everyone was confused. They couldn't understand the current battle. They couldn't understand why Yi Xian's sword was so strong. Yi Xian didn't want to fight. It was obvious that this guy was here for revenge because his sister had been defiled. Although this wasn't Yi Xian's doing, Yi Xian pitied him. Therefore, Yi Xian didn't want to fight with this guy. All right, that's enough. I've said it before, I didn't do anything to your sister. Although I don't know where you heard this news from. If I didn't do it, then I didn't do it. I, Yi Xian, will never hide my actions. You didn't do it? Oof. Yi Xian, you damn guy. I saw you walk out of my sister's room with my own eyes. Don't tell me you're still trying to deny it. Yi Xian was amused. She saw him with her own eyes? What did you see me? Last night? Oof. Yi Xian, you don't have to deny it. I'll kill you today. Haha, Yi Xian laughed. Last night? He didn't even leave the house last night. However, he couldn't allow this guy to continue causing trouble. All right, I said it wasn't me. But since someone dares to defame me, I'll catch them no matter who they are. Don't worry. I, Yi Xian, will handle your matters for you. Consider it for myself. I'll keep that person's head for you. Yi Xian indifferently said. His gaze had already looked around. At this point, Yi Xian naturally understood that someone wanted to frame him. If it wasn't for the fact that he still had some strength, then Hong Yuan's brother would be enough to kill Yi Xian. The person hiding in the dark had a good plan. He didn't even need to make a move to get rid of Yi Xian. Unfortunately, his wishful thinking was too good. Yi Xian wasn't someone who would allow himself to be trampled on. Back off, Yi Xian shouted. Wei Zhentian and Yi Xian had a tacit understanding. In an instant, two beams of light erupted. Deicide slash. Yes, it was the deicide slash. In Yi Xian's hands, the Godslayer could only release one deicide slash at a time. But when Wei Zhentian took over control, he could release two at once. Boom, 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 boom. The two beams of light forced Hong Yuan's brother and the demon god projection to retreat. Moreover, because the Godslayer was bound to deal a critical hit to the demon god projection was severely injured. In fact, although Hong Yuan's brother was anxious and angry, he was still rational. From Yi Xian's refusal to make a move to Yi Xian's explanation, combined with his own situation, Hong Yuan's brother was still a little confused. The day before, his demon celestial phantom was merely an intermediate heavenly god. However, after the incident with his sister, someone inexplicably bought him a precious treasure at an extremely low price. It was a precious treasure that could temporarily increase the strength of his demon celestial phantom. That treasure could allow the demon god projection to unleash the strength of a peak heavenly god for 2 hours. Hong Yuan's brother had never encountered such a good thing in the thousands of years he had been in the training camp. Why did he encounter it yesterday? Also, it seemed that someone had deliberately led him to Hong Yuan's residence. At that time, someone had told him that his sister was in danger. That was why he had rushed over immediately. Coincidentally, just as he went over, he saw the scene of Yi Xian coming out. If Yi Xian had directly attacked him, he might not have suspected anything. However, Yi Xian had only fought with his sword and was already able to force him to retreat. Chapter 2166. If Yi Xian could force him to retreat without making a move, Didn't that mean that Yi Xian had the ability to defeat or even kill him? Yi Xian didn't do that. Instead, he faced him calmly. Without a doubt, Hong Yuan's brother slowly calmed down. You really didn't do what happened to my sister? Yi Xian lifted his head and said calmly. I said it wasn't me, so it wasn't me. If I really did it, do you think you would still be alive to cause trouble for me? As for your sister, I don't even know who she is. Why would I cause trouble for her? Don't worry, since I'm involved in this matter, I'll get to the bottom of it. Just wait. I'll catch the mastermind very soon. Yi Xian always kept his promises. Moreover, Yi Xian knew very well that he had to find a solution for today's matter. If he didn't catch the mastermind, then similar incidents would happen again. However, Yi Xian still underestimated the methods of those people. After Hong Yuan's brother left temporarily, Yi Xian began his investigation. He asked Fian and the people from the fire division to investigate on his behalf. Unfortunately, it was to no avail. Of course, Yi Xian also knew that the power he could use now was far too little. However, Yi Xian didn't pay too much attention to it. Since the mastermind had caused trouble for Yi Xian the first time, then there would be a second time and a third time. It could be said that as long as those people didn't achieve their goal, then similar incidents would happen again and again. Another few days passed. On this day, Yi Xian was originally just staying in the training camp. However, a sudden attack erupted. They were all from the training camp. 5 people, 5 heavenly gods from the 10th division. The strangest thing was their reason. It's him. That's right, it's Yi Xian. He's gone too far. He's such a bully. That's right. Today, we must find him for revenge. Why? He's a genius. Fine, we're just ordinary people. We can give in to him or even hide from him. But why does he have to force us step by step? Since he doesn't give us a way out, then let's die together. When the 5 of them arrived in front of Yi Xian, they first discussed amongst themselves before directly attacking Yi Xian. The moment he attacked, it was a killing move. It was as if he wanted to perish together with his opponent. Die, you damn bastard. Boom! Yi Xian didn't even understand what was going on when he was suddenly attacked. While the 5 of them were discussing, Yi Xian also heard them. However, he didn't expect them to be talking about him. However, the 5 of them did not hesitate at all when they said they would attack. Ding! A powerful attack has been detected. Attention host! Along with the system notification, Wei Zhentian once again controlled the Godslayer to automatically protect its master. Ding! Host, please take note. The host does not have enough soul fragments. The defense has been broken. Boom! Yi Xian was sent flying by a punch. Even with the Godslayer's defense, he was still sent flying by a punch. Fortunately, Yi Xian was not hurt at all. He only took a few steps back. However, this was still unacceptable. Damn it, what are you doing? Yi Xian looked at the 5 of them, anger rising in his heart. 5 upper-level heavenly gods. Could it be that these fellows had eaten the wrong medicine? QWPM, you know what we're doing. Everyone, let's attack together and kill him. The 5 of them charged towards Yi Xian again. Yi Xian grabbed the Godslayer and prepared to summon the 1,000 bee sword servants at the same time. However, he suddenly held himself back. It was obvious that these people were being used by someone else to cause trouble for him. If Yi Xian attacked now, he might not be able to defeat these people. Even if he did, he would only fall into the trap of the mastermind. Therefore, even if Yi Xian was unwilling, he could only hold himself back. Everything was the work of the mastermind. As for these people, they were just innocent people. It could even be said that they were victims as well. All of you stop. All right, since you want to cause trouble for me, then tell me clearly how I offended you. Haha. How did you offend us? Yi Xian, oh Yi Xian, to think that you're number 1 on the genius leaderboard. With your talent and strength, we are no different from ants in front of you. Yi Xian, you can kill us. We're not strong enough. We're just ordinary people. We can't beat you, and we don't have anyone to back us up. We'll admit it. However, why do you have to toy with us, and even use our families? Yi Xian, the 182 people in Liujia village are all ordinary people I brought up from the mortal realm. What threat do they pose to you? Or rather, what threat do I pose to you? Why do you want to kill all of them? The 5 of them spoke one after another. Their voices were extremely agitated, and they were even a little incoherent. However, Yi Xian still understood. What these people meant was that Yi Xian had started causing trouble for them a few days ago. At first, he wanted them to hand over their families to Yi Xian and use them as slaves. Naturally, they didn't comply. Then, Yi Xian used all sorts of methods to deal with them. He even destroyed their families in the end. F***CK. Damn you. Yi Xian cursed after hearing this. Yi Xian, how dare you be so arrogant? Brothers, let's attack together. Today we must kill him. Even if we die, we must avenge our families. The 5 of them were extremely agitated. However, Yi Xian was even more agitated than them. All of you stop. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of god-level mounts instantly appeared and surrounded the 5 of them. However, they didn't attack. At the same time, Yi Xian spoke to the 5 of them. A bunch of fools. What I need your families for? Slaves? Do you think I, Yi Xian, lack divine crystals? Damn you. Are you trying to label me as a pervert again? Previously, you labeled me as a pervert. Why? What is it this time? Yi Xian was extremely agitated. Wasn't that person in the dark a little too much? Slaves? It seemed like he had to pay a visit to the slave pavilion. You 5 pigs, come with me now. Yi Xian looked at the 5 of them and said in an unquestionable tone. To be honest, if the 5 of them hadn't been forced into a corner, they wouldn't have dared to cause trouble for Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian's strength was quite strong in the training camp. Other things aside, just his title as the #1 on the genius leaderboard was enough for Yi Xian to enjoy a lot of privileges in the training camp. After being scolded by Yi Xian, the 5 of them shriveled up. They had mustered up their courage to look for Yi Xian. In reality, they were already prepared to die. They had no intention of leaving alive. However, cultivation wasn't easy. Chapter 2167. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, although family was important, their own lives were important as well. The 5 of them weren't crazy enough to do anything for their family. At this moment, Yi Xian directly walked forward, and the 5 of them followed. QWPM, it wasn't just the 5 of them, but also the surrounding onlookers. Yi Xian had been in the limelight recently, and it was hard for him not to be noticed. Now, Yi Xian was finally going to make a move. Regardless of whether they suspected Yi Xian or believed that Yi Xian wasn't a good person, they all wanted to see what Yi Xian was going to do. Yi Xian was only a mid-level heavenly god, so they weren't afraid of Yi Xian. In an instant, more than 100 people followed behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian put away his god-grade mounts, frowned, and went straight to the Lingxiao Pavilion branch in Mo City. Everyone knew that Yi Xian was related to Ling Xian Pavilion, but no one knew what that relationship was. However, when Yi Xian arrived at Ling Xian Pavilion, they knew that Yi Xian had an extremely high status in Ling Xian Pavilion. This disciple greets the Pavilion Guardian Elder. This time, Yi Xian didn't hide his identity at all. Instead, he flashed his token. Yi Xian didn't care about hiding his identity. Since the plan was to attract Mo City's attention while the Withered Bone Swordsman, Fire Division, and the others investigated in secret, he had to be arrogant to the end. Almost everyone in Ling Xian Pavilion's branch knelt in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's Pavilion Guardian Elder's token was the real deal. Even if he was just a general without an army, he still had a lot of authority. You, send a message to Elder KU and tell him to come see me quickly. This Pavilion Protector Elder, Vice Pavilion Master Moonless, this lowly one doesn't dare. Although that person didn't say explicitly, his meaning couldn't be any clearer. What he meant was that Yi Xian was just a Guardian Elder. Although he was powerful enough, KU is now a Guardian Lord. It was unreasonable for KU to meet Yi Xian. Yi Xian could not be bothered to waste his breath. He immediately released a voice transmission talisman. If these people did not dare, then he would do it himself. In any case, Yi Xian had never paid much attention to this Pavilion Guardian Elder from the very beginning. He was only looking for Missing Moon to ask for his help. Behind Yi Xian, the people from the training camp were dumbfounded. They did not understand what Yi Xian was doing. In fact, perhaps even Yi Xian himself didn't quite understand. Under normal circumstances, what was Yi Xian? His relationship with Master Moonless was probably not good enough to order him to do anything. However, Yixian could only ask Missing Moon for help now, so he couldn't be bothered to think too much about it. Soon, a figure walked out of the transmission array of this Ling Xian pavilion branch. It seemed like he was still doing something and was still holding a pile of materials in his hands. Grandmaster Yi, why did you call me over in such a hurry? Master Moonless came to Yi Xian and looked at the angry Yi Xian in confusion. I need your help, Yi Xian said without hesitation. Haha, Grandmaster Yi, are you kidding me? Given Grandmaster Yi's abilities, what can't he do? Although Yi Xian's cultivation base was not high, his restriction Grandmaster clone was extremely powerful. At least in the eyes of someone like Missing Moon, Yi Xian definitely had a lot of super powerful followers by his side. After all, any powerful restriction master would have powerful followers by his side. Unfortunately, they didn't know that Yi Xian didn't care about restriction masters at all. Seeing Yi Xian's cold eyes, Master Moonless could tell that Yi Xian really had something to ask of him this time. Therefore, Master Moonless stopped smiling and said directly, Grandmaster Yi, what do you need from me? I owe my life to you. As long as you have any orders, I will do my best to help you. Boom! That one sentence made everyone go crazy. Who was Master Moonless? He was the deputy pavilion master of Ling Xian Pavilion. Although his cultivation base was not high, it was the result of being trapped for countless years. In fact, Master Moonless' status was equivalent to the second sect master in Ling Xian Pavilion, because even the sect master had to give in to him. However, such a person had said that he would do his best to help Yi Xian as long as Yi Xian asked him to. What did that mean? Didn't that mean that as long as Yi Xian was willing, the entire Ling Xian Pavilion would be at his disposal? This time, the people from Mo Shang training camp truly understood how terrifying Yi Xian was. As for the two people following behind Yi Xian, their faces turned green. There was no doubt that these people had participated in plotting against Yi Xian. Now, when Yi Xian was ready to shed all pretense of cordiality, they knew that they had seriously underestimated Yi Xian's strength. All right, I'm glad to hear that. I'm currently in Mo Shang training camp, and I'm very annoyed. Someone has been plotting against me one after another. I want you to help me find out who that person is, Yi Xian said. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw a strange expression on Master Moonless' face. Wait a minute, Master Yi. What did you just say? Where are you? I said that I'm an apprentice in the outer camp of Mo Shang training camp. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Of course, you could do whatever you want, Master Yi. However, Master Yi, even if you wanted to set up a training camp stronger than Mo Shang training camp, it would only take a few words. Why would you run off to be an apprentice? Don't tell me you have nothing better to do. Master Moonless' words left Yi Xian somewhat unable to react. Of course, this kind of misunderstanding couldn't be blamed on Yi Xian or Moonless. After all, Master Moonless couldn't possibly know that Yi Xian's restriction skills were completely dependent on the system. Yi Xian also couldn't possibly know that Moonless meant that he wanted Yi Xian to use his status as a restriction grandmaster. Yi Xian was in a daze. However, Master Moonless said somewhat helplessly, Master Yi, you really like to joke around. Grandmaster Yi, you really like to joke. You came to me for such a small matter. However, this also shows that Grandmaster Yi doesn't treat me, Moonless, as an outsider. All right, this matter, no matter what, I, Moonless, will do it beautifully for you. Just wait for the good news. After Moonless finished speaking, a dumbfounded Yi Xian led the similarly dumbfounded members of the training camp back. At this moment, no one doubted Yi Xian anymore. After all, even someone like Ling Xian Court's vice pavilion master had been so submissive in front of Yi Xian. Anyone who wasn't a fool would know that Yi Xian's identity wasn't simple. This matter was just a momentary impulse for Yi Xian. However, he didn't know how big of a crisis it had caused. The few times Yi Xian had been targeted, there was no doubt that it was Yi Lixio's doing. He was the one who arranged for people to scheme against Yi Xian. According to Yi Lixio's plan, he wanted to play Yi Xian to death. Chapter 2168. However, when Yi Xian exploded, he realized that he had provoked a powerful figure. Ling Xian court was actually going all out to help Yi Xian. Yi Lixio had no choice but to seek help from his family. As for Master Moonless, he immediately met with the sect master of Ling Xian court after Yi Xian left. Master Moonless had never expected that Yi Xian, who had originally been prepared to use his own strength to help Yi Xian because he owed Yi Xian a debt of gratitude. However, the sect master of Ling Xian court had asked everyone in Ling Xian court to help Yi Xian. Take note, everyone in Ling Xian court. In other words, this included Ling Xian court's allies. Moreover, when he said this, the pavilion master of the Ling Xian pavilion was actually extremely happy. It was as if being able to help Yi Xian was a glorious thing. Master Moonless had always known that the pavilion master paid special attention to Yi Xian. From the first time he had met Yi Xian, the pavilion master had asked if Yi Xian had participated in the training. Then, the pavilion master had given Yi Xian the status of a pavilion guardian elder without hesitation. It seemed that all of this hadn't been unintentional. In the beginning, Master Moonless had thought that the pavilion master was trying to rope in Yi Xian. However, it now seemed that this wasn't the case. After all, there was no need to mobilize all of Ling Xian court's forces to help Yi Xian in order to rope in Yi Xian. It seemed that there was more to this than met the eye. A huge storm was brewing. At the center of this storm was the Mo Shang training camp, a place that no one had paid much attention to. As for the reason, it was simply because Yi Xian was there. Of course, such a huge storm wasn't something that could happen in a day or two. Because of Yi Xian's sudden explosion, Yi Lixio had stopped all actions against Yi Xian. At this moment, he finally realized what kind of power this seemingly ordinary Yi Xian had. In fact, this power hadn't even been fully unleashed yet. Ling Xuanga alone was enough to force him to stop whatever he was doing. He was only the 7th prince of the Dark Knight Empire. He had some power, but it wasn't that great. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sent to the Mo Shang training camp. At this moment, his family had already sent him a message, telling him not to make the slightest move. Otherwise, he would be punished according to the family rules. What had originally been a personal conflict between Yi Lixio and Yi Xian had now turned into a conflict between Ling Xian court and the entire Dark Knight Empire. Moreover, as long as Yi Xian did not give up on his ambitions, this conflict would continue to escalate. Of course, Yi Xian was still unaware of all this. So, he took advantage of his opportunity to cause trouble for the slave pavilion. The slave pavilion was a power, but in the 100 territories, it was only a small power comparable to the Myriad Beast School. Yi Xian led the 5 people who had been captured at the beginning to the outside of the slave pavilion. A huge ancient town. This was the headquarters of the slave pavilion. There were still many experts in the slave pavilion. To be honest, no matter how one looked at it, Yi Xian and a few people from the Mo Shang training camp didn't seem to have the slightest chance of winning. However, when Yi Xian and the others arrived, they discovered that there were only a dozen people left in the slave pavilion's headquarters. The others had all run away. In a fit of anger, Yi Xian burned down the slave pavilion's headquarters. When the people left behind saw Yi Xian coming over, they ran away without a second word. The weakest among those people was a mid-level sky, celestial grade, yet they didn't even have the guts to make a move against Yi Xian. After burning down the slave pavilion's headquarters, Yi Xian's anger was more or less vented. Previously, all sorts of trouble had been stirring up in Yi Xian's heart. However, now that his anger had subsided, Yi Xian calmed down and started to think carefully. It seemed like there was something strange going on around him. There was simply no need for Ling Xian Pavilion to help Yi Xian. Yi Xian and Ling Xian Pavilion didn't have much contact with each other. They only had some contact with Master Moonless. However, Ling Xian Pavilion had helped him. Not only had they helped him, but they had also used all their means to help him. In less than 3 days, Yi Xian received news from Ling Xian Pavilion. He also knew that Yi Lixio was the mastermind behind the scenes. However, Yi Lixio had also run away. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared without a trace. When Yi Xian found out about Yi Lixio's identity, he found it very strange as well. Logically speaking, given Yi Lixio's background, killing Yi Xian should have been as easy as crushing an ant. However, when the local conflict had erupted, Yi Lixio had chosen to back down. What was this? What was all this? Yi Xian was really confused. This time, he was truly dumbfounded. Even the system, without any information, couldn't understand what was going on around Yi Xian. Of course, one thing was for sure. It seemed like there was a mysterious power helping Yi Xian from behind the scenes. While Yi Xian was pondering this in the training camp, the external conflict was escalating. The first conflict to erupt was between Lingxian Pavilion and Jubao Pavilion. QWPM within the 100 territories, there was no doubt that there was an irreconcilable conflict between Lingxian Pavilion and Jubao Pavilion. However, in the past million years, the two factions hadn't really had a major conflict. However, in one day, Lingxian Pavilion had mobilized all their elites and destroyed thousands of Jubao Pavilion strongholds. By the time Jubao Pavilion had put up a defense, it was already too late. They'd attacked as soon as they'd said so. As for the reason given by Lingxian Pavilion, it turned out that a young master from Jubao Pavilion had once targeted Yi Xian. Could it be that Lingxian Pavilion had already made preparations to attack and was just using me as an excuse this time? Yi Xian thought to himself. This was the only reasonable reason he could think of. Otherwise, how could he explain why Lingxian Pavilion was helping him with all their might? Clouds of mystery surrounded Yi Xian as earth-shattering changes took place in the outside world. The 100 territories, which had been peaceful for 1,000,000 years, suddenly erupted into conflict. Moreover, it was in the form of battle. Every day, countless people died. Every day, countless battles took place. Lingxian Pavilion was like a madman, attacking Jubao Pavilion and the Anya Empire in the name of avenging Yi Xian. All this mystery was solved when a messenger from the Fire Tribe found Yi Xian to report to him. This made Yi Xian understand why Lingxian Pavilion was so crazy. Your subordinate pays his respects to the God Emperor. On this day, a messenger from the Fire Tribe came to Yi Xian's room. It's you. What's the matter? Of course, Yi Xian knew this person. After all, Yi Xian had seen him before. God Emperor, your subordinate has been ordered to investigate the matter of Xianxia and has made some progress. Therefore, I have specially come to report to you. In addition, there is another matter that your subordinate feels the need to tell you. Oh, what is it? Yi Xian was puzzled. He didn't know what this person wanted to say. God Emperor, this matter concerns Lingxian Pavilion. Chapter 2169. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, Yi Xian's Realization. Lord God Emperor. In order to make it easier for our Fire Clan to observe various places, we have set up some organizations in many places. As for the 100 realms of Xianxia, because the Xianxia is somewhat special, we have increased our investment. That Lingxian Ge is a force that the third clan leader of the Fire Clan personally established to make it easier for us to investigate the Xianxia. What? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He had never thought that the Lingxian court was actually a member of the Fire Tribe. In other words, the Lingxian court had been part of Yi Xian's force from the very beginning. Now, everything made sense. Why would the Lingxian court give him a clone of a court protector elder? And why would they go crazy when they found out that Yi Xian had given them an order? Because the Lingxian court belonged to Yi Xian to begin with. Or rather, it belonged to the inheritor of the ancient God Emperor's inheritance. Yi Xian was the new God Emperor, so wasn't he the owner of the Lingxian court? Yi Xian didn't know whether to laugh or cry about this ancient lost clan. After all this fuss, Yi Xian had been tormenting himself for so long. But it turned out that he had always been under the protection of the Lingxian court. However, Yi Xian didn't know whether to be happy or angry. Happy? After all, Yi Xian was pleasantly surprised that he had suddenly gained such a large force. It had also strengthened Yi Xian a lot. Angry? Damn it. If he hadn't gone to look for the Lingxian court, the people of the Lingxian court would never have told Yi Xian the truth. Damn, there were so many good things in the Lingxian court. If Yi Xian had used them directly, he would have broken through many levels by now. All right, I understand. Xian sat down speechlessly. Lord God Emperor, the third clan head still has something to tell you. Go ahead. I'm listening. Yes, Lord God Emperor. The fire tribe member suddenly knelt on the ground, which made Xian frown slightly. Then he said, Lord God Emperor, the three clan heads wanted me to tell you that because the strength of the ancient E clan is very limited and the enemy we need to fight against is extremely powerful, Xian Court is the strongest force in our fire clan. Therefore, we can follow your orders this time. After all, some conflict have already existed, but only this time. In the future, the fire division will not be able to obey your orders so directly. What did he mean? Xian frowned. The man continued to explain. Lord God Emperor should know how powerful the enemy we are facing is. If we are not careful, our ancient E-clan will be annihilated. Lord God Emperor, please use your strength to increase your strength and lead us to fight against that powerful existence as soon as possible. When the time comes, I will fight with all my strength. But for now, we have to hide our strength. These are the original words of the third clan leader. The third clan patriarch said that if Lord God Emperor wants to blame us, please wait until we eliminate that powerful existence first. Xian nodded and said, Yes, you're right. Yes, your considerations are correct, I understand. Then, let's do as you think. However, we cannot relax our investigation of Mo Shangge. We must find out the secrets of Mo Shangge. Yes, Lord God Emperor. All right, there's nothing else. You could go about your business. Xian waved his hand and dismissed the man. However, after the man left, Xian smiled bitterly. QWPM, although the third clan head's words were vague enough, Xian understood the meaning behind them. Perhaps it was necessary to hide their strength. However, more importantly, the higher-ups of the fire division had not completely accepted Xian. Because of their ancestral teachings and clan rules, they had no choice but to serve Xian as their master. However, Xian was too weak now, so they would not completely submit to Xian. To put it bluntly, the lost ancient clan belonged to Xian, but they did not belong to Xian either. After all, too many things had changed in the span of hundreds of millions of years. It was still unknown how loyal the lost ancient clan was to Xian. Perhaps they would follow Xian without hesitation if he was powerful enough. However, Xian was not powerful enough. Power. Everything depended on power. Sometimes, even if Xian encountered a great opportunity, he would not be able to control it completely if he was not powerful enough. For example, Xian Court could be called the Lost Ancient Clan. However, Xian quickly adjusted his mentality. Why should he entrust everything to others? Xian was Xian. There was nothing that he had to rely on others. Whether the Lost Ancient Clan was willing to obey him or not, Xian had to improve his own strength. The next morning, Xian appeared in a place he had never been before. Many people were stunned. The mission hall. In Mo Shang training camp, many people usually went to complete missions in exchange for points. However, Xian had never been there before. This was Xian's first time here. At the moment, the matter regarding Xian Court had already exploded to a new height. Everyone in the training camp had a new understanding of Xian. It could be said that in the entire training camp, at least in the outer camp, no one dared to say no to Xian. However, he clearly had great power and authority. Yet, Xian had come to Mo Shang training camp and was preparing to accept a mission today. The girl in charge of issuing missions was dumbfounded. It was not strange for anyone to come to her place, except for Xian. Xian's appearance made her somewhat unable to react. Young Master Yi, may I ask what business you have with me? Oh, I'm here to accept a mission. Can I see the list of missions? Xian did not care about the gazes around him. They were not him, so how would they know about his affairs? The girl hesitated for a moment. Fortunately, she reacted immediately and directly placed all the missions in front of Xian. The missions in Mo Shang training camp were divided into levels: easy, normal, difficult, and nightmare. These 4 levels represented 4 different types of missions with different levels of danger. Simple missions had an average casualty rate of almost 0. Normal missions had a casualty rate of 20%. Difficult missions had 50%. Nightmare missions had a casualty rate as high as 70%. Of course, according to the missions, the rewards are naturally different too. Moreover, every mission had a minimum realm requirement. Xian did not have much leeway to choose. In fact, apart from the simple missions in front of him, there were only 2 difficult missions. Mission 1. A powerful divine beast has appeared in the 100-Flower Valley. The 100-Flower Valley seeks help from the Xianxia training camp. The request is to defeat or kill the evil divine beast. However, the requirement is to be an intermediate celestial god. Chapter 2170. These were the only 2 normal missions that Xian could accept at the moment. As for simple missions, there were a few. However, how could Xian possibly do such a mission? To Xian, such a mission was simply a waste of time. Can I accept these 2 missions at the same time? Xian asked the girl. The 2 normal missions only had a reward of 200 points. It was very little, but Xian could only accept these 2 missions, so he didn't want to miss them. If young master, you want to accept these 2 missions at the same time, of course you can. At this moment, the entire hall was abuzz with discussion. It wouldn't be strange for anyone to appear here, but it was strange that Xian had come. In their eyes, how could a high and mighty young master like Xian accept such a low-level mission? 200 points? What could he exchange for an Xianxia training camp? Perhaps it could be exchanged for many things in the eyes of ordinary disciples, but for someone like Xian, those things were no different from trash. No one knew what Xian was trying to do, but Xian still did it. He knew his own business. Xian had been a little lazy for some time. He had used up all the resources he had, but Xian hadn't done anything for such a long time. This wasn't a good habit. Xian was just a lowly existence in the realm of the gods. What right did he have to be lazy? According to the priority of the mission, Xian's first choice was the 100-Flower Valley. Was it the evil divine beast? Xian wanted to see what kind of divine beast it was. Soon, Xian arrived at the 100-Flower Valley. The 100-Flower Valley used to be a place with beautiful scenery. Because of its abundance of beautiful divine flowers, it wasn't exactly famous, but still had some reputation. The master of the 100-Flowers Valley was a superior deity. He brought his people to live here. In the beginning, he was doing well. However, the appearance of the divine beast disrupted everything. Furthermore, when he led his clansmen to encircle and annihilate the mythical beast, he was the one who was heavily injured. He had no choice but to seek help from the Xianxia training camp. When Xian came over, the valley master of the Centauria Valley clearly didn't trust Xian. You were the person sent by Xianxia training camp? Sitting on the bed, the valley master looked at Xian with eyes full of distrust. Yes, I'm here to help you get rid of that divine beast. Little guy, fighting against that divine beast is not a joke. How about this? You can go and take a look first. If you're not sure, don't try to show off. That divine beast has a strange ability, and we can't do anything to it. You must be careful, and don't throw your life away. Although these words were a little harsh, the valley master had good intentions. Therefore, Xian just smiled and didn't say anything. Seeing that Xian didn't say anything, the valley master sent someone to lead the way for Xian. The 2 of them walked quickly and soon reached a mountaintop. Master, it's just ahead. That divine beast is extremely powerful. I dare not go any further. Please be careful. Xian nodded. This guy was just a mortal. He wasn't even an inferior deity, so it was normal for him to be afraid. In that case, Xian would go over by himself. Xian gripped the Godslayer in his hand as Xian walked forward cautiously. Xian released his divine consciousness and kept an eye on his surroundings. He didn't know what the divine beast was, but it was always good to be cautious. However, when Xian saw the divine beast, he was delighted. It turned out that it was a Devourer beast. The Devourer beast was a good thing for Xian. He would have to depend on him for the Devourer points. He didn't expect to be so lucky. It seemed that he would have to walk around more often in the future. If he hadn't accepted this task, wouldn't he have no fate with the Devourer beast? This was a high-level Devourer beast. It could give Xian 3 Devourer points. 3 Devour points was not a small number for Xian. Since he had confirmed his target, there was no need to hesitate. Let's kill it. Kill. Xian's figure flashed as he pounced towards the divine beast. The divine beast noticed Xian coming over. However, it had occupied this place for a long time, and no one was a match for it. Although there were some who came to fight it, they were all defeated by it. Ding! System notification. Detected a special Devourer beast. Host, please take note. Killing this Devourer beast will not only give Devourer points, but also a special material, the heart of a flower. Heart of a flower? What was that? System, what's the use of this heart of a flower? Ding! System notification. The heart of a flower can be used to fuse with a floral spirit swordsman. Air! Floral spirit swordsman? Xian was stunned. Anyway, the name didn't sound like much. Of course, no matter what, it was still a swordsman. He had to get his hands on it. Deity, slaying, slash. Boom! Xian attacked with his sword. What Xian didn't expect was that the divine beast had lived a peaceful life for too long, or that it had underestimated Xian. In any case, it was killed in one strike. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining 3 Devourer points. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining the heart of a flower. At this time, Xian began to observe the uses of this floral spirit swordsman. Floral spirit swordsman. Fusion requirement. 10 Devourer points. Heart of a flower. Spirit of a grass. Soul of a tree. Origin of water. Damn. For special materials and 10 Devourer points. Xian was stunned for a moment. However, as he continued to read, he realized that this floral spirit swordsman wasn't as useless as its name suggested. Floral Spirits Swordsman Special Ability 1, Flower Tribe. The Floral Spirits Swordsman can summon 100 flower fairies to fight for him. Following the notification of his realm, he can also summon tree fairies, grass fairies, etc. QWPM Special Ability 2, Flower Protection. The flower fairies have extremely powerful recovery abilities. After the host has obtained the Floral Spirit Swordsman, he will also have powerful healing abilities, able to heal others in a large area. This was an ability. Other than that, there was also the increase of his realm. This Floral Spirit Swordsman actually had a lot of room for improvement. It seemed that Xian still had to get his hands on this Floral Spirit Swordsman. After all, a powerful healing ability was able to bring Xian a very powerful combat strength. Especially the current Xian, what he needed was this kind of strength. Moreover, the Floral Spirit Swordsman still had a lot of room for improvement. One must know that the newly fused Floral Spirit Swordsman was only a lower rank 1 true god. This was a swordsman that needed to be nurtured continuously. Once it matured, it wouldn't be simple. It could be said that if the Withered Bone Swordsman that Xian created was a consumable, then this Floral Spirit Swordsman would become an existence with unlimited potential. Chapter 2171. Xian had accepted 2 missions at the same time. Now that he had completed the first mission, it was time for him to complete the second one. Although Lingbo Lake was called a lake, its surface area was extremely large. It far exceeded the scope of a normal lake. Actually, there was nothing worth paying attention to at Lingbo Lake all this time. However, a few years ago, a large number of fish living in the lake had mutated. The fish in the realm of the gods all possessed a certain level of intelligence. The reason they were cultivating here was, of course, to cultivate a godhead. However, for some reason, the fish in Lingbo Lake continued to mutate into demon gods. Moreover, it was not through conventional cultivation. Instead, it was through a mysterious force that forcefully raised them. Xian had come alone this time. He did not have any helpers by his side. Moreover, there was no one around Lingbo Lake. It was impossible to say that there was no danger. However, Xian would not give up. Since he had accepted the mission, he naturally had to complete it. Xian circled around Lingbo Lake, but did not find anything out of the ordinary. Could it be that there's nothing noteworthy here? That shouldn't be the case. Since the training camp has issued a mission, there must be something strange. Only then would the training camp issue a mission. Then, where's the problem? Xian frowned slightly. System, can you scan the surrounding environment? Yixian suddenly asked the system. After all, there were some things that Yixian could not do, but that did not mean that the system could not do either. Ding. System notification. Scanning environment. Ding. System notification. Hidden restriction detected. Does the host wish to remove it? There was a restriction? Yixian was slightly taken aback. To be honest, he had not found any traces of a restriction. The surroundings did not seem to be anything special. He did not expect that there would be a restriction here. What an ingenious concealment method. It actually managed to hide from Yixian's detection. Unfortunately, even so, it could not escape the system scan. Of course, it's easy to break, Yixian said to the system. His mission this time was to investigate the Lingbo Lake. Now that he had discovered something unusual, he naturally wouldn't let it go. Ding. System notification. Seal broken successfully. In an instant, a strange little bridge appeared in front of Yixian. This small bridge was clearly connected to the center of the Lingbo Lake. It was strange because the bridge was made of plants that lived in the water. Something was off. This time, Yixian didn't need anyone to tell him that something was amiss. Without hesitation, Yixian stepped on a bridge. The bridge wasn't too far away. Not long after, Yixian arrived at a small island. There was actually a small island hidden on Lingbo Lake. To be honest, let alone Yixian, even in Immo Shang's training camp, no one knew. However, when Yixian saw the residents on the island clearly, he was slightly taken aback. Mere people? Mere people weren't considered rare. No matter what kind of creature they were, even if they were plants, as long as they cultivated diligently, they would have the chance to transform into humans. Therefore, there was nothing strange about the mere people. However, what Yixian found strange was that there were actually quite a few strong individuals among the mere people. The strongest one had even reached the level of a mid-level true god. Of course, the strangest thing was the behavior of these mere people. It was as if they were being controlled by mysterious power. There wasn't the slightest hint of joy in them. All that was left was a lifeless atmosphere. All the mere people were doing their own things. Their most important task now was to build an altar. Although Yixian was quite far away, he was still able to clearly see the appearance of the altar. After all, the altar was too huge. On top of the altar was a statue of a divine beast. However, there was something special about this statue. Its face was that of a human face. A beast with a human face? Yixian was puzzled. He didn't understand what was going on here and what kind of secret was hidden here. It seemed that everything that Yixian had seen so far had nothing to do with his mission. However, Yixian's keen senses told him that he needed to investigate this place carefully. He was afraid that this human-faced beast had extraordinary abilities and was also hiding a huge secret. Ooh, who's there? Suddenly, Yixian heard human voices. When Yixian looked over, he realized that there were already a dozen strong mere people rushing towards Yixian. These mere people were emitting black flames all over their bodies. Just based on their appearance, Yixian knew that this might be where the secret he was looking for was. Here, there were demonized mermaids, and there was a large number of them. No one would believe that there was no secret here. Yixian didn't want to get into a conflict with these mere people. After all, once a conflict broke out, Yixian would be in constant trouble. When that happened, he might not even be able to keep his life, let alone find out more information. However, these demonized mere people were Yixian's target after all. Therefore, this battle was simply unavoidable. They were all mere people, but it was obvious that the demonized mere people no longer treated other mere people as their own kind. They were unscrupulously suppressing their own kind. All of this was extremely strange. Thousand Beasts Sword Attendant. In an instant, Yixian also made his move. The Thousand Beasts Sword Attendant was summoned. However, before he could summon his god-grade mount, a powerful aura swept over him. The aura was so powerful that even Yixian felt his hair stand on end. Retreat. Yixian didn't hesitate and immediately retreated. However, the Thousand Beasts Sword Attendant rushed forward instead. Boom! Suppression. This was definitely suppression. Even without summoning a divine mount, The strength of the 1,000-beast sword attendant was not to be trifled with. Unexpectedly, the 1,000-beast sword attendant was immediately suppressed and killed as soon as it appeared. So strong. Just a moment ago, Xian was still thinking about how to investigate this place. However, in the next moment, Xian's only thought was to escape. Too strong. That aura was too strong. It could be said that it was a powerful existence that Xian had never seen before. Xian frantically retreated along the small bridge. Behind him, a group of demonized mare people chased after him. Xian didn't even dare to look back. Run. He fled frantically. He didn't expect to encounter such a powerful existence on Xian's first mission. It could be said that it was Xian. If it had been anyone else carrying out this mission, they would have died without a doubt unless they were super strong. Xian fled for his life because he knew very well that if he didn't leave, he might not be able to escape. Chapter 2172. Translator, Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo Studio. Xian could tell from their indignant gazes that they really wanted to kill Xian. They were afraid that the situation here would be exposed. Unfortunately, they couldn't leave the island. Xian didn't dare delay. He quickly returned to the training camp and looked for Lu Luo. Xian, why are you looking for me? Lu Luo was also surprised. Although Xian was his subordinate, he basically ignored him. Apart from the annual assessment, Xian basically didn't even talk to him. However, he didn't expect Xian to take the initiative to look for him this time. Xian looked at Lu Luo. In the training camp, Lu Luo was one of the people Xian was more familiar with. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and directly said, "Senior, do you know about the normal difficulty mission at Lingbo Lake?" News of Xian accepting a mission had already spread in the training camp, especially the people from the First Division. They couldn't understand why Xian would accept a mission. Naturally, there were endless discussions. Now that Xian was asking him about Lingbo Lake, it seemed like Xian really did accept a mission. "Yes, I know. What's the matter? Is there a problem with Lingbo Lake?" Lu Luo asked Xian. "Senior, I'm afraid something big is going to happen at Lingbo Lake. I accepted a mission this time and went to check on Lingbo Lake. However, I found a seal there. After breaking it, I found a mysterious island. There are a large group of merfolk living on that island. The merfolk aren't the key. The key is that all the merfolk have demonized. Moreover, there's a super powerhouse guarding the island." "Wait a minute, Xian. Did you say merfolk and merfolk? What's going on? What's the difference?" Lu Luo interrupted Xian, but the point of his question was rather strange. "I'm not too sure about the specifics. To put it simply, there are two different races up there. Of course, it's also possible that there are two branches of the same race." "Senior, that's not the point. The point is that the monsters up there have been demonized." "Demonization?" Lu Luo frowned. The term demonized was not unfamiliar, but in the god realm, encountering demonized creatures or people was very rare. There were many fiend celestials, but there was a fundamental difference between demonization and fiend celestials. Demon gods were either cultivated in a different way, or they were cultivated by the demon race. However, demonization referred to people and monsters whose hearts and appearances had undergone a huge change. Cruel, bloody, violent, merciless, this kind of thing couldn't be called human, but a beast. "All right, Xian, I got it. You rest first. I'll report this matter immediately." Lu Luo did not doubt Xian's words at all. With Xian's status, there was no need for him to lie. Therefore, Lu Luo quickly found the higher-ups of the training camp. This matter seemed to have suddenly disrupted the rhythm of the entire training camp, as well as Xian's life. The appearance of these demonized monsters was inexplicable. It could be said that without Xian's discovery, it wouldn't have caused so much trouble at all. In fact, Xian wasn't the only one who had investigated the Lingbo Lake mission. Many others had. Moreover, even during normal times, some people would go there. However, no one had discovered the slightest abnormality. That was because the restriction there was too strong. It could be said that if Xian hadn't gone there, this secret might have been difficult to discover. At this moment, after the appearance of the demonized monster, Even the battle between Xianxia and the Dark Knight Empire had subconsciously slowed down. Demonizing a monster was a big deal. In the hundreds of territories of MO, there had never been such a thing. In fact, what people knew about demonized monsters came from legends. It was said that there were countless other Master Gods' worlds outside of their Master God's world. Among them, the Master God closest to their Master God's world was a demon god. The battle between the two Master Gods had never stopped. However, the battle usually broke out in the secret realm of battle. It was an independent battle space opened up by the two Master Gods. It was also the only point of contact between the two Master Gods' worlds. QWPM, the God's world, was an incomparably huge continent. However, this continent wasn't complete. On the continent, there were countless voids. It was said that these voids were all destroyed by battles in ancient times. These voids could be considered as hopeless, unless one was a super strong Master God. Anyone else who entered would only die. This was because they contained extremely violent natural laws. Once one entered, one would be instantly killed. These voids had undoubtedly become the best natural borders. In this way, the areas where the two Master Gods' worlds touched were naturally very important. The battle between the Master God, where Xian and the others were, and the Demon God Master God, were all concentrated on one battlefield. In other words, there shouldn't be any demonized creatures inside. Could it be that there was some huge conspiracy happening? The entire Mo Shang training camp had already started moving. Not only Mo Shang training camp, but various forces, including Ling Xian Court, had also sent out their own experts. They were prepared to set off together to find out what was going on. As Yixian was the first person to scout out the news, he was also asked to join the team. Yixian didn't mind this. In fact, even if Yixian wasn't asked to join, he would have taken the initiative to join. Last time, Yixian had escaped with great difficulty. No matter what, this time, he had to find some trouble with those demonized creatures. The team gathered 5 days later, which could be said to be extremely fast. Yixian and 30 over heavenly gods set off as the vanguard under the leadership of an inferior grade 3 spiritual god. Pavilion Protector Elder. Is this the place you were talking about? This spiritual god was from Ling Xian Court, so he was very polite to Yixian. Yes, this is the place. Yixian answered affirmatively. After receiving Yixian's affirmation, everyone quickly became alert and looked around. However, they couldn't find anything. Even the inferior grade spiritual god was no exception. Pavilion Protector Elder, there's nothing here. Did you remember the wrong location? If I said this is the place, then it can't be wrong. There's a restriction here. Didn't you notice it? Restriction? Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. They didn't feel the slightest fluctuation of the restriction. Generally speaking, any restriction would have a slight fluctuation. One didn't even need to come into contact with the restriction to feel it. Of course, according to the level of restriction, the strength of the fluctuation wasn't certain. At this moment, when they heard Yixian say that there was a restriction here, everyone paid close attention. Many people even took out Dharma treasures to check the restriction. Chapter 2173. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, however, there was nothing wrong with this place. There was nothing at all. They did not notice anything strange. Yixian was surprised by this. However, now is not the time to argue about this. System, break the restriction here. Ding. Restriction successfully broken. In everyone's eyes, Yixian had just walked to a corner and stood there in a daze for a while. Then he stretched out his hand and waved it casually. In an instant, a bridge made of seaweed appeared in front of them. There really is a restriction here. Everyone's gaze on Yixian changed. Yixian was able to discover this restriction and break it, but they weren't able to. What did this mean? Didn't this mean that Yixian was a restriction master? In an instant, everyone was even more terrified of Yixian's mysteriousness. Yes, it was terrifying. Who exactly was Yixian? Why were there so many mysterious things around him? Of course, now is not the time to talk about this. After Yixian broke the restriction, everyone stopped hesitating and walked forward. However, just as Yixian was about to pass by, he heard the spiritual deity speak. Pavilion Protector Elder, please wait here for a moment. Since this restriction recovered after you left last time, it's very likely that this restriction has the ability to repair itself. In order to prevent the people behind from finding this small bridge, please stay and lead the way for the others. It could be said that the spiritual deity's cultivation level was much higher than Yixian's. However, Yixian's status was much higher than his. Naturally, he could only treat Yixian as an equal. Yixian nodded. The spiritual deity's words were reasonable. Thus, Yixian did not follow them. The rest of the group was only half a day late. Yixian did not know what they were doing during this time. Of course, Yixian was too lazy to care. Fortunately, the barrier hadn't been repaired yet. Thus, the crowd continued to walk forward together. However, what Yixian did not expect was that when they entered, they only saw a few broken corpses. The dozens of people in the vanguard group were all dead. No, there was still one person who was fighting. It was the inferior spiritual deity. Quick, save him. In an instant, several experts rushed over and fought with the demonized mermaids. Soon, the inferior spiritual deity was saved. What's going on? Someone quickly asked the inferior spiritual deity. The inferior spiritual deity looked at everyone and then said, "This is probably a place. When I led the vanguard group, I heard a voice that said that it had been waiting for us." "What do you mean? Speak clearly. What is this?" "I don't know what it means either. I only know that the voice said that it had been waiting for us for a long time." Then, those mermaids started to attack us crazily. Although the average strength of these demonized monsters is not very strong, they have some special magical abilities. Among them, the thing that you have to pay attention to the most is that these demonized monsters can be resurrected indefinitely. What? Resurrected indefinitely? This time, everyone, including Yixian, was stunned. Resurrection. There were indeed some people who had such a special magical ability. But resurrecting indefinitely? What was this? Let's not care about this for now. Kill. We must find out the secret of this place first. Everyone did not hesitate and directly charged forward. Yixian was about to charge forward, but the inferior spiritual deity of Lingxian Court suddenly stopped Yixian. "What do you want?" Yixian looked at the inferior spiritual deity, not knowing what he wanted to do. "Pavilion Guardian Elder, leave this place quickly. Don't hesitate and leave immediately. This place is not something we can provoke. Furthermore, a pair of eyes have been watching us. Therefore, I can only ask everyone to charge forward together. However, the others can die, but you can't." What did he mean? Yixian was somewhat unable to react. This fellow's words did not explain clearly what had happened. He only asked Yixian to leave quickly. It was not impossible to ask Yixian to leave, but he should at least make things clear. However, the inferior spiritual deity did not continue speaking. Instead, he suddenly struck out at Yixian with his palm. Of course, he did not want to hurt Yixian. In fact, his palm directly pushed Yixian away at extremely fast speed. "What are you trying to do?" Yixian looked at that person as his figure flew backward, but he still continued to ask. However, a giant black hand that suddenly appeared answered Yixian's question. That hand had stretched out from under the island. As soon as it appeared, it locked onto Yixian, who was about to leave. Damn it! What the hell was this? Yixian was shocked. The current situation had already exceeded his expectations. He had been sent flying the first time he had come here. He had to escape the second time he had come here. What the hell was this? Damn it, damn it. This feeling made Yixian very unhappy. The inferior spirit god suddenly jumped up and used all of his strength to block the attack for Yixian as he loudly shouted, "Don't worry." He shouted, "Leave quickly." Yixian did not know why this fellow had done this. However, when he left and looked at the island for the last time, he already knew that he was the only one who would be able to escape this time. Yixian's last glance caused his heart to tremble in fear, to the point of incomparable panic. Then what exactly did Yixian see? It turned out that the last thing Yixian saw was numerous, extremely enormous black hands. These enormous hands were unimaginably strong, and they could casually grab a person. It could be said that no one in the heavenly god realm could resist them. However, merely 5 domain enlightened spirit gods had come this time. Obviously, they weren't of any use at all. How could this be possible? How could this be possible? What exactly happened? Yi Xian was extremely astounded in his heart. He didn't hesitate to return directly to the training camp. At this moment, everyone in the training camp wasn't too worried about exploring Overwave Lake at all. Perhaps it could be said that this was a battle that they had absolute confidence in. However, when they saw Yi Xian return with a panicked expression, they clearly revealed different expressions. The pavilion master of Towering Pavilion walked swiftly over to Yi Xian. Actually, if it wasn't for the sudden appearance of those devilized monsters, then perhaps he wouldn't be willing to meet Yi Xian at all. Grandmaster Yi, what happened? Why have you returned alone? Where are the others? He addressed Yi Xian as Grandmaster Yi. This was naturally for the sake of concealing Yi Xian's identity. They won't be able to return. Yi Xian spoke while looking at everyone present here. The Domain Enlightened Spirit God Realm. Chapter 2174. Wait a minute, Yi Xian. You said they won't be coming back. What's going on? The one who spoke was the camp commander of Immortal Training Camp, a mysterious guy. Of course, it was a little difficult to call him a camp commander, so everyone respectfully called him Venerable Wu Yu. Lingbo Lake is a trap. I don't know what secrets there are inside, but everyone who went there is trapped. It's almost impossible to get them back. Yi Xian replied. However, Yi Xian's words attracted criticism. Kid, what did you say? You said my brother and the others won't be coming back? You better explain yourself. You were the one who brought the news back, and you're the only one who came back. You have to explain yourself. This time, the person who spoke belonged to a faction called the 100 Buildings. It was considered a mid-tier faction in the 100 territories of Emotion. Yi Xian frowned. This person's words were obviously filled with suspicion. It could even be said that this person directly pointed to Yi Xian as the person who planned this conspiracy. The 100 Buildings were on good terms with the Anya Empire, so it was reasonable that they didn't like Yi Xian. However, wasn't it too much to suspect Yi Xian at this time? In an instant, Yi Xian only felt his anger rising. He glared at that person. However, someone jumped out before Yi Xian. This person was Master Moonless. Tower Master 100 Buildings, what did you say? Are you suspecting Master Yi? Haha, I suspect him. Is he not worthy of suspicion? All right, let me ask you. Why was he the only one who discovered the secret of Lingbo Lake? So many of us went there before, but why didn't anyone discover it? Now, he's the one who brought everyone there, but no one came back. What do you think is going on? As soon as this was said, someone immediately agreed. That's right. This Yi Xian is only a mid-tier celestial god. Among the people we sent, most of them have higher cultivation than him. Why is he the only one who came back? Where are the others? If there's really any danger, why can't the others escape if this kid can? After all, there are 5 domain enlightened spirit gods in the group. Could it be that this kid is even more formidable than domain enlightened spirit gods? What did you say? Yi Xian's heart was already burning with anger. Although these people were very strong, Yi Xian really wanted to kill them right now. The feeling of being wronged was really uncomfortable. Not to mention that Yi Xian was only able to escape this time because that domain enlightened spirit god from Ling Xian court had risked his life to save him. What are you looking at? I'm talking about you, kid. Don't tell me that you shouldn't be suspected. Humph, in your Ling Xian pavilion. I suspect that your Ling Xian pavilion is colluding with this kid, deliberately trying to exhaust everyone's strength. These words were getting more and more ridiculous. Yi Xian gripped the God Slayer tightly. However, the pavilion master of Ling Xian court arrived by Yi Xian's side and shook his head lightly at Yi Xian. It could be said that no one believed Yi Xian, but the members of Ling Xian court would absolutely not doubt Yi Xian. Even if the pavilion master of Ling Xian court didn't fully acknowledge Yi Xian's identity. Kill him. Suddenly, a voice resounded. They actually wanted to kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian was infuriated. But what could he do? Not to mention that he was utterly unable to defeat these people. Just how was he supposed to explain this matter? Actually, it really was Yi Xian who'd noticed something unusual, and then it was Yi Xian who'd returned by himself. especially the members of Mo Shang's training camp. At this moment, their gazes were clearly hostile. Even Lu Luo had an extremely complicated expression in his eyes. All of you are suspecting me. When Yi Xian saw the look in Lu Luo's eyes, he felt a sense of desolation in his heart. In any case, he'd been in this training camp for a period of time. However, even the people in the training camp weren't willing to believe him. How would Yi Xian feel about this? You want to kill Yi Xian? Then you'll have to step over my dead body first. Even though Ling Xian court wasn't willing to fully obey Yi Xian's orders, the pavilion master still stood by Yi Xian without hesitation when Yi Xian was in trouble. For a moment, the entire place fell silent. A portion of the people remained neutral, because they couldn't make a decision before the matter was clarified. Another portion of people really wanted to kill Yi Xian, but they couldn't help but be wary of the pavilion master of Ling Xian court. All right, quiet down. Give me some face. This matter still needs to be investigated. It won't be too late to make a decision after the matter is clarified. Venerable Misty Voice stood up. No matter what, Yi Xian was now considered one of his people, and this was his territory. Therefore, he couldn't ignore this matter. What's wrong? Does Mo Shang's training camp also want to stand with this kid? Someone jumped out. Yi Xian didn't know any of these people, but he didn't understand why these people wanted to kill him. What good would killing Yi Xian do for them? Or could it be that they purely wanted to use Yi Xian to vent the depression and anger in their hearts? Venerable Misty Voice frowned. This person's words could be said to be too much, and it made Venerable Misty Voice quite angry. However, at this moment, a voice came from afar. Reporting, seniors. Someone has returned. Someone had returned. Yi Xian finally relaxed a little, and the others looked at each other. However, they didn't hesitate and quickly walked out. When Yi Xian saw that person, he was simply terrified. At this moment, that person's entire body was emitting black qi, and one of his hands and legs had actually been demonized. Moreover, his eyes revealed a trace of madness. Fortunately, his divine sense was still clear. Quickly retreat. That thing has revived. As soon as he finished speaking, the domain enlightened spirit god fell unconscious. Second brother, the pavilion master of 100 pavilions, charged over. It turned out that this person was his younger brother. QWPM, that person's words instantly cleared Yi Xian of suspicion. However, no one paid any attention to Yi Xian at all. In their eyes, Yi Xian was just an ant. Even if it was a misunderstanding, could it be that they had to apologize? That thing? What thing? Yi Xian was puzzled. However, someone dispelled Yi Xian's doubts. How could this be possible? Isn't he already dead? At that time, we attacked with all our strength, and even spent an entire 100 years to refine him. Why? Why would he revive? Moreover, he even appeared at Overwave Lake? This is impossible. That thing was destroyed a long time ago. Why would he revive? This is impossible. Chapter 2175. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Ancient Sword Intent? What was that? Yi Xian frowned once again. Fortunately, Master Moonless came to Yi Xian's side and explained softly to Yi Xian. Grandmaster Yi, you might not know this, but the ancient sword intent was originally a remnant sword intent from a mysterious ancient sword. It couldn't even be considered a weapon spirit. However, after countless years of cultivation, it actually obtained an incomplete godhead, and its strength was incomparably powerful. This sword first appeared in Mo's 100 territories about 500,000 years ago. At that time, no one knew how terrifying it was. They thought it was a treasure and attracted many forces to fight over it. However, after everyone fought a bloody battle, the ancient sword killed thousands of people and broke out of the encirclement. Then it destroyed dozens of cities and nearly 10 million people died. After that, everyone in Mo's 100 territories gathered all their forces and destroyed it after a bloody battle. It could be said that it was a disaster, a terrifying disaster. This is also the main reason why, under normal circumstances, no one would search for ancient treasures. No one knows what kind of changes an ancient item will cause. So that's how it was. Who would have thought that a mere strand of ancient sword intent would cause such trouble? After hundreds of thousands of years, it actually appeared again and brought about such panic the moment it appeared. It could be said that this incident appeared very suddenly. However, it was extremely fortunate to be able to discover it in advance. If the powerful ancient sword intent that could dominate the entire Mo's 100 territories had succeeded in his plan, Mo's 100 territories would probably experience another catastrophe. Suddenly, just as Xian was thinking about the problem, the system's voice sounded. Ding! System notice. Congratulations to the host for discovering a special item, Ancient Sword Intent. This item is a super treasure that can upgrade the host's bloodline. It is recommended that the host take it. What? It's actually a good item that can upgrade my bloodline? However, is it certain that I have a way to subdue such an awesome item? Xian was depressed. It was impossible for him to not be able to obtain a treasure that was useful to him after discovering it with great difficulty. Xian could not accept such an outcome. No, he had to find a way to strengthen himself. Suddenly, Xian's gaze turned towards the pavilion master of Lingxian Court. It seemed that there were many good things in Lingxian Court. However, Xian had not completely subdued Lingxian Court yet. It seemed that he would have to pay a price in exchange for the benefits he wanted. Pavilion Master Lingxian, is it convenient to find a place to talk? Xian said to the Pavilion Master of Lingxian Pavilion. Lingxian Pavilion's Pavilion Master's heart skipped a beat. He was very clear about Xian's status. It could be said that if Xian really wanted to force him to submit, he really wouldn't be able to refuse. As for the reason why the ancient remnant clan obeyed the ancient God Emperor was not only because of his status, but also because the ancient God Emperor had a way to control them. In fact, the ancient era's remnant clans were all slaves of the ancient God Emperor during the ancient era. Moreover, they had been marked as slaves during that era. It was different from the method used to control slaves. What controlled them was their bloodline and their soul. To put it simply, when Xian obtained the ancient God Emperor's inheritance, which was the divine seal, he had already inherited complete control over them. It was just that Xian didn't know this at all. QWPM, if Xian lived, they would live. If Xian died, Xian only needed to say one word, and they would all be buried with him. That wasn't all. Most importantly, they had no right to refuse Xian at all. This was because Xian's every word had the power to oppress their souls. Fortunately, Xian didn't know about this, so Pavilion Master Lingxian naturally wouldn't take the initiative to bring it up. All right, Grandmaster Yi, this way please. Although Pavilion Master Lingxian really wanted to display the attitude of an expert in front of Xian, once he spoke, his tone changed, and he still appeared somewhat respectful. Soon, Xian and Pavilion Master Lingxian arrived at a room. Pavilion Master Lingxian casually set up a simple restriction before asking Xian, Grandmaster Yi, do you know what I'm talking about? Grandmaster Yi, why are you looking for me? It's like this. I want to discuss a deal with you. I'm not sure if you're interested. Haha. Grandmaster Yi, please explain what the deal is. Pavilion Master Lingxian was a little puzzled. He didn't know what Xian wanted to discuss with him. All right, I'll get straight to the point. I hope to set up an absolute defense restriction for you in exchange for a batch of treasures from Lingxian Pavilion to increase your strength. Yes, this was Xian's trump card. Back when Xian had broken through the restriction mountain, he had obtained an absolute defense restriction. Although that thing couldn't be imparted to anyone, Xian could use it. When Xian mentioned the absolute defense restriction, Pavilion Master Lingxian already knew what it was. After all, he was a servant of the ancient God Emperor. Xian's inheritance also came from the ancient God Emperor. Therefore, he naturally knew what the absolute defense restriction was. In fact, regardless of whether Lingxian Pavilion was willing or not, he could only agree. Sure. Pavilion Master Lingxian's reply was very brief. He didn't even ask what Xian wanted in exchange. Of course, someone would naturally negotiate with Xian about this matter. If Pavilion Master Lingxian were to negotiate, he would probably agree to whatever Xian said. Therefore, Pavilion Master Lingxian was still a little smart. However, what was the use of being smart like this? Xian was anxious to improve his strength, So he didn't waste any time and went straight to Ling Xian Pavilion's main pavilion. This was Ling Xian Pavilion's headquarters, and it occupied an extremely large area. However, Yi Xian wouldn't surround the entire place with restrictions. All he needed to do was surround Ling Xian Pavilion's main hall with restrictions. This matter only took Yi Xian 3 days. Perhaps it would really take a long time for someone else to set it up, but Yi Xian had the help of the system, so it was naturally very fast. Ever since Pavilion Master Ling Xian had parted ways with Yi Xian, he had been deliberately avoiding Yi Xian. The person in charge of contacting Yi Xian was Master Ku. Grandmaster Yi, your restrictions are simply too perfect. I believe that unless a sovereign personally intervenes, no one will be able to break them. What a powerful and profound restriction. I, Ku, have seen countless restrictions in my life, but I've never seen Grandmaster Ye's restriction before. Haha, as long as you're satisfied, then can you give me my reward? Chapter 2176. Yi Xian was slightly taken aback. To be honest, he didn't expect to receive so much at first. According to Yi Xian's thinking, it would be good enough if he could get some treasures, but he didn't expect that he would be given 20 pavilions as his direct subordinates. Perhaps it didn't seem to be of much use on the surface, but that wasn't the case. Strictly speaking, these 20 pavilions were already considered Yi Xian's own forces. In other words, Yi Xian could establish his own forces from today onwards. If one day the sex system was reopened, then Yi Xian would be able to obtain a lot of benefits. Even now, with 20 branches, Yi Xian would still be able to obtain a stable income. Yi Xian was poor, very poor. He couldn't even take out 10,000 divine crystals. All right, deal. Even though they were both from the same force, they both had their own plans. This meant that Yi Xian and Ling Xian Court were destined to be at odds. Giving Yi Xian 20 pavilions was nothing to Ling Xian Court. One had to know that Ling Xian Court had more than 10,000 pavilions in the hundreds of territories. However, it was a huge gain for Yi Xian. According to Yi Xian's request, these 20 pavilions were all located in the territory of the Myriad Beast Divine Sect. Among them, Yi Xian's first pavilion was Ling Xian Court's. Yi Xian still remembered Elder Lin from that pavilion. He was an amiable old man. Back then, Yi Xian's strength was average. When Yi Xian first came to the God Realm, it was Elder Lin who gave Yi Xian his first benefit. Now, Yi Xian naturally wanted to thank him properly. Yi Xian once said that he would repay Elder Lin if he had the chance. Now was naturally an opportunity. Yi Xian didn't have any experience in managing an auction. Therefore, he immediately gave out an order. He promoted Elder Lin to the position of Regional Supervising Elder and was responsible for all matters related to Ling Xian's 20 pavilions. Of course, Ling Xian didn't go over himself. That Elder Lin would never have imagined that his kindness back then would be exchanged for the benefits he had today. Yi Xian returned to his residence in the Mo Shang training camp. Although he was a little disappointed with the Mo Shang training camp, Yi Xian did not have any other place to stay for the time being. Moreover, Fian was still here. When he returned to his room, he couldn't wait to check the things that Ling Xian Ge had given him. Needless to say, Ling Xian Pavilion was not stingy. Unfortunately, these treasures that were priceless in the outside world only had one use for Yi Xian. System, have you finished checking? Are there any treasures worth keeping? Ding! System notification. No special items were found in this test. All right, since that's the case, let's devour them all. It's time to level up. Ding! Host has made a breakthrough. Host is now a 5th grade, medium-level heavenly god. Was it only upgraded to the 5th rank? Although it could be said that he had leveled up 4 times in a row, Yi Xian was not satisfied. One had to know that the enemy he was going to face next was extremely powerful. In Yi Xian's heart, his enemy was not only the ancient sword intent, but also the people who had humiliated him that day. Yi Xian would not let any of them go. It seemed that for a moment, the matter regarding the Lingbo Lake had stopped. However, everyone was very clear that this was just the calm before the big battle. Around the Lingbo Lake, various forces had already built countless camps. There were powerhouses stationed at all times, observing at all times. The entire Lingbo Lake had been completely sealed off. No one was willing to face that catastrophe again, so everyone hoped to be clear of the danger in advance. It was just that they hadn't made a move yet. Without sufficient preparation, no one dared to rashly start a war. Before the storm came, Yi Xian continued to accept missions and earn points. Yi Xian discovered the secret of the Lingbo Lake, but he was not treated as a hero. Instead, he was treated as a jinx. For a moment, the entire training camp hid far away from him. Fortunately, Yi Xian did not care at all. In a short 3 months, Yi Xian had earned 10,000 points. Only he, Yi Xian, could achieve such a terrifying speed. Then, why was Yi Xian working so hard to earn points? It turned out that there was a vermilion grass spirit in the Mo Shang training camp. No more, no less, exactly 10,000 points. On this day, Yi Xian went directly to the exchange center to exchange for the vermilion grass spirit. Young Master Yi, what would you like to order? Yi Xian was already known by everyone in the Mo Shang training camp. Of course, whether it was good or bad intentions, only they knew. Oh, I would like to exchange for a treasure. Okay, what treasure would young Master Yi like to exchange for? The vermilion grass spirit. The vermilion grass spirit? Young Master Yi, the vermilion grass spirit requires 10,000 points. Are you sure you want to exchange for it? I'm sure. Yi Xian was sure. He now had 10,050 points. After exchanging for the vermilion grass spirit, he only had 50 points left. It could be said that it was very, very close. He could be expelled at any time. However, Yi Xian did not care at all. In the beginning, Yi Xian came to the Mo Shang training camp to investigate the secrets of the Mo Shang pavilion. However, after such a long time, there was no result at all. Then, what was the point of Yi Xian staying here? In addition to the previous incident, Yi Xian was already prepared to leave this place. There was no reason for Yi Xian to stay here. Besides, all the force's attention was on the Lingbo Lake. Who would care about Yi Xian's little tricks? Therefore, Yi Xian was already prepared to enter the Mo Shang pavilion. On this day, Yi Xian brought Fian and left the Mo Shang training camp. However, his departure did not attract anyone's attention at all. This was because Yi Xian did not even greet the training camp and directly left. Perhaps the only one who would feel regret was that Lu Luo. In fact, Lu Luo regretted it when he found out that Yi Xian had been wronged. No matter what, Yi Xian was considered half a disciple of his, even if the two of them had almost no contact. However, in Lu Luo's heart, he did not really care about Yi Xian at all. Yi Xian could be said to be the disciple he was most proud of. Unfortunately, he did not express his goodwill, and Yi Xian did not care about him at all. After Yi Xian left, the entire Mo Shang training camp was almost the same as before. Only Lu Luo's heart was filled with pain. Of course, Yi Xian's departure was not without movement. Yi Xian did not have many friends in the training camp, but he had many enemies. Many people were jealous of Yi Xian's talent, jealous of Yi Xian's strength, and also jealous of Yi Xian's Fian. Therefore, after Yi Xian left, there were actually people who secretly celebrated. Chapter 2177. Young Master, where are we going? Fian was suddenly informed to leave by Yi Xian. Although she didn't ask much, she still found it a little strange. Yes, I'm preparing to join Mo Shang Pavilion, but I don't need you to join this time, because I'm not going to do anything good. When we get there, I'll arrange a place for you to stay. You can stay there for the time being and wait for me to finish my business. All right, I understand. QWPM Fian didn't care what Yi Xian had arranged. In any case, she would do whatever Yi Xian arranged. Mo Shang Pavilion didn't accept disciples all the time, but they could go there normally. However, they would need to pass the 5 stages normally, and it was much stricter than when they were accepting disciples. Of course, Yi Xian was completely confident. Mo Shang training camp could be considered to be the first and only place Yi Xian temporarily stayed in after coming to the Divine Realm. To be honest, if it wasn't for the humiliation of that misunderstanding, perhaps Yi Xian wouldn't have left so quickly. Therefore, when Yi Xian left, he left a restriction in Mo Shang training camp where he originally lived. Of course, only Luo Qi knew about this. Luo Qi was Fian's friend, and in Yi Xian's heart, she could be considered half a friend. Leaving that restriction was his remembrance of Mo Shang training camp, and, at the same time, it was also for Luo Qi and the others. Yi Xian had a feeling. Not long after, perhaps a shocking battle would break out in Mo Shang training camp. This feeling was just Yi Xian's subjective judgment without any basis. It was just Yi Xian's own guess, so he didn't tell anyone. After all, who knew if this would happen? Very quickly, Yi Xian and Fian arrived at the mountain gate of Mo Shang Pavilion. Mo Shang Pavilion, as the strongest force in the 100 territories, occupied a huge area. However, there was only one entrance, because when Mo Shang Pavilion was first established, it was chosen as a dangerous place. Mo Shang Pavilion was surrounded by endless mountains. Of course, these endless mountains weren't considered dangerous places. However, the strange thing was that at the end of the endless mountains was a natural danger zone that anyone below Lord level would find difficult to cross. Up until now, no one had been able to successfully pass through. On top of that, the Mozhang Pavilion had deliberately strengthened the restrictions. Thus, there were only two ways to enter the Mozhang Pavilion. The first option was to use the teleportation formation to directly enter. However, Mo Shang Gu naturally couldn't set up a teleportation formation casually. The second method was to walk through the only entrance. Halt! Who are you waiting for? Just as Yi Xian reached the entrance, two people blocked his path and looked at Yi Xian warily. Yi Xian already knew that the Mo Shang Pavilion was heavily guarded, but he didn't expect it to be this tight. It was obviously a sect, but there were countless hidden and open sentries. It could be said that it was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to enter. This junior came from the Mo Shang training camp and hopes to enter the Mo Shang Pavilion to learn martial arts. Yi Xian did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Don't go to training camp? So that's how it is. What's your name? A white-clothed figure appeared before Yi Xian, and he smiled as he gazed at Yi Xian. My name is Yi Xian. Yi Xian seemed to be slightly respectful. After all, this person's cultivation was at the domain enlightened spirit god realm, and he was absolutely not someone that Yi Xian could easily offend. You're Yi Xian? That person seemed to be slightly surprised when he heard Yi Xian's answer. Never had he imagined that Yi Xian would actually know Yi Xian. Of course, Yi Xian's main objective for behaving so strangely in the Mo Shang training camp was to draw the attention of others. So, it wasn't strange that someone had found out about him. Yes, I'm Yi Xian. Haha, I never expected that it really was you. Weren't you doing well in the Mo Shang training camp? Why did you leave? That person started laughing because Yi Xian's reputation was widespread in the Mo Shang Pavilion. After all, he was the first on the genius rankings. So, how could Mo Shang Pavilion not know of him? Since Senior knows me, then you're naturally aware that I was misunderstood when I took the risk to investigate Overwave Lake that day, right? I was truly unwilling to continue staying there because I was unable to endure such humiliation, said Yi Xian. This was a flawless excuse, and it could be considered to be a reasonable reason as well. So that's how it is. Yi Xian, I'm here to tell you that no matter where you are, such matters are unavoidable. The Lingxian Pavilion and the Dark Knight Empire went to war because of you, and the scope of the battle can even be said to include the entire territory. Moreover, your reputation as the first on the genius rankings is extremely enviable. Most importantly, you don't have strength. So long as you don't possess strength that instills fear in others, then no matter how great your natural talent is, you'll never be worthy of having the right to be respected by others. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yi Xian naturally understood. However, he'd never imagined that this person would actually tell him so clearly. Junior understands. In fact, it's precisely because of this that I'm begging Master Mo Shang Pavilion. Since that's the case, then follow me. If you want to enter my Mo Shang Pavilion, you must go through 5 tests. No matter who it is, it's unavoidable. I'll bring you over now. All right, I'm at 5th Hall, Ming Kong. If you have the chance in the future, you can come to the 5th Hall to find me. 5th Hall, Senior. Can you tell me more about Mo Shang Pavilion? After all, I'm about to enter the sect, asked Xian as he followed that person forward. One had to know that he'd actually come to Immortal Pavilion to gather information. Haha, you're quite confident. However, with your talent, those 5 tests indeed won't be able to stop you, so there's no harm in telling you. The outside world only knows that Immortal Pavilion is a single entity. However, very few people know that Immortal Pavilion is divided into 10 main halls. The 10 main halls do their own things. If there's no order from the pavilion master, they usually don't interfere with each other. The first hall is the strongest and is personally managed by the pavilion master. It's incomparably mysterious and is also the place that everyone in Immortal Pavilion wants to enter the most. The second hall to the fourth hall are called the inner chambers. They're considered the core of Immortal Pavilion's elites. As for the rest, including my 5th hall, they're actually the outer chambers. Of course, you shouldn't underestimate the back 6 halls just because they're called the outer chambers. In fact, the back 6 hall's strength shouldn't be underestimated either. Xian nodded. At least he had a preliminary understanding of the 10 halls of Immortal Pavilion. Then, why did this person tell Xian all this and specifically point out that the 5th hall wasn't weak? His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Once Xian joined, he would have to choose a hall to join. This person's intention was obviously for Xian to choose the 5th hall. After all, with the talent that Xian had displayed, it was even possible for him to join the 1st hall. However, he didn't know that even without his words, Xian definitely wouldn't join the 1st hall. This was because it was obvious that the 1st hall was probably the place that Xian had to be wary of the most. Xian had always known that Immortal Pavilion was a puppet of the Annihilation Organization. Of course, he only knew this in the past. However, from the looks of it now, Immortal Pavilion wasn't completely controlled by the Annihilation Organization. Chapter 2178. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, it didn't matter if it was because the Annihilation Organization was afraid of something or if they didn't have the ability to fully control the Mozhang Pavilion. However, one thing was certain. Xian still had room to maneuver within the Mozhang Pavilion. It should be said that this news was good news for Xian. After passing through several checkpoints, Xian finally arrived at one of his targets. Xian, do you see what's in front? This is the first test. Xian lifted his head to look. In front of him was a staircase so long that he couldn't see the end. It was a staircase that could only allow one person to pass. Beside the Absolute Heaven staircase, there was an ordinary path. Clearly, the Absolute Heaven staircase was built specifically for the purpose of testing. Xian, you have to be careful. Walking up from here isn't as simple as you think. There will be a powerful pressure here, and this pressure will automatically adjust according to your current cultivation level. You must remember, if you can't withstand it, then don't force your way through. Otherwise, once you fall down the Absolute Heaven staircase, you'll be severely injured at the very least, and your body will be smashed to pieces at the very least. Do you understand? I understand. Good, then go up. I'll wait for you at the exit. Xian nodded and walked up the staircase. However, Xian was still a little confused. Why was this person directly in charge of his test? Were there no special examiners? Of course, Xian didn't know that there were special examiners. However, the competition between the 6 halls was extremely intense. Therefore, the reason why this person wanted to overstep his boundaries was because he wanted to leave a good impression on Xian. In that case, when Xian chose which hall to go to, their chances of entering the 5th hall would be greater. As Xian walked up the Absolute Heaven staircase, he did indeed feel the existence of the pressure. Moreover, as Xian walked forward, the pressure also increased step by step. However, this kind of pressure wasn't the slightest bit of pressure to Xian. The first stage was nothing more than this. When Xian walked up, he saw that person waiting for him at the exit. This time around, it was not only that person. Instead, there were many others. Xian, come, let me introduce you. These people are the elders of the inner and outer 9 pavilions. This time, they have specially come to watch you pass the test. Watch me break through. Xian was slightly taken aback. Was there a need for that? Of course, he didn't dare to say this out loud. All right, next, you can enter the second stage. In the second stage, you can use any method you want, and your only goal is to cross the single plank bridge. Of course, you will encounter some obstacles on the single plank bridge. All right, you can go now. The one who spoke was a person with an incomparably stiff expression. It seemed like this was the person in charge of Xian's assessment. Xian did not hesitate and stepped onto the single plank bridge. Ding! System notification. Detected special treasure, soulwood. Xian was slightly taken aback. What was going on? This single plank bridge used for the assessment was actually a special treasure? System, what is the use of this soulwood? Ding! System notification. Soulwood can be used to refine a special soul controlling magic treasure. This magic treasure can affect the people around it invisibly. This effect is very subtle and not easy to detect. What? Xian was slightly taken aback. As expected, this Immortal Pavilions was not a good place. Now, Xian was only taking the entrance assessment, but he had already encountered something like the soulwood. Then, how many other similar treasures were hidden in the Immortal Pavilions? System, can you protect my soul? I don't want to be contaminated. Ding! System notification. This soul wood will not cause any harm to the host. That was good. Xian was relieved. If he hadn't even entered the Immortal Pavilions and his opinion had been changed, then it would be a tragedy. Xian stepped onto the soul wood and could clearly feel the strong attraction from his soul, as if it wanted to devour Xian's soul. If there wasn't a system notification, Xian would definitely have mistaken this as a suppression method for the assessment. However, with the system notification, Xian was very clear in his heart that the effect of the soul would had already been activated. Xian also had many treasures that could affect the soul. In addition, his bloodline was strong, so he was able to resist it. However, it was only an assessment now. Then, how many more such things were hidden in the Immortal Pavilions? It seemed that strengthening his soul strength was unavoidable. Of course, he had to mention Fian here. During this period of time, Fian had continuously used food to strengthen Xian. Among them, the main strengthening was at the soul level. It seemed that Fian had her own plans for making food for Xian to eat. On top of the soul wood, there were indeed some divine beasts that tried to stop Xian from advancing, but they were no threat to Xian at all. Although the next 3 tests could be considered difficult, they really couldn't threaten Xian. Finally, after an entire 7 days of assessment, Xian could be considered to have succeeded. At this moment, Xian was brought to a large hall. Other than the first hall, the other 9 halls had each sent their own people. It seemed that it was time to decide the ownership of Xian. Outside this hall, there were many people gathered. Most of these people had joined the Immortal Pavilions last time. However, no one in the 9 halls was willing to accept them, so they were still dawdling here. According to the rules of the Immortal Pavilions, if no one was willing to accept them, then they could only choose to leave after 3 years. In fact, being able to leave was also a blessing for them. However, Xian couldn't leave. Fortunately, Xian couldn't say that no one wanted him. You are Xian. The leading elder looked at Xian with a faint smile in his eyes. Yes, this disciple is Xian. Not bad, not bad. To be able to pass the test in 7 days, your talent is indeed extraordinary. The second hall wants you, the elder said domineeringly. Of course, how could it be possible to accept Xian so easily? Last time, Nangong Yu and Bei Qindong were taken in by the second hall. This time, shouldn't this Xian belong to the third hall? Someone stood out and directly wanted to snatch him. However, as soon as he finished speaking, someone else immediately stood out. Didn't the third hall also get that big foot? The fourth hall doesn't have any good seedlings. No matter what, even if it's an equal split, it should be the fourth hall's turn, right? Chapter 2179. Gentlemen, shouldn't you consider Xian's choice? When Xian passed the test just now, he displayed an impressive ability in the area of restriction. Among the 10 great palaces of the Immortal Pavilion, only the 7th palace is in charge of restriction. Shouldn't Yi Xian belong to the 7th palace? I'm sure all of you understand the principle of exhausting one's talents. Haha, exhausting one's talents? That's what I'm thinking too. This lad summoned 1,000 mythical beasts at the 4th stage. It's obvious that he's good at taming beasts. Our DC Hall is in charge of managing mythical beasts. Isn't his talent in taming beasts suitable for our 4th palace? Everyone looked at each other as if they wanted to divide Yi Xian into 9 and take one away each. Speaking of which, the Emotion Pavilion's test was really not simple. It forced Yi Xian to reveal his trump cards. Of course, these trump cards were just for show. What was Yi Xian's real trump card? It was the system. As long as the system was around, everything else was nothing. However, even the things that Yi Xian had shown made everyone want to take them away immediately. However, Yi Xian had already made up his mind. Therefore, when the elder of the 2nd palace asked Yi Xian to make his choice, Yi Xian replied without hesitation. Seniors, since I, Yi Xian, have joined the Emotion Pavilion, doesn't that mean that whoever cultivates in the Emotion Pavilion belongs to the Emotion Pavilion? I'm not talented, but I met the 5th palace when I came here. I believe in fate, so I've decided to join the 5th palace. The 5th palace? Fate? Of course, Yi Xian did not believe in fate, but this was no doubt a good excuse. The others looked at the people from the 5th palace and felt annoyed. They understood the meaning behind Yi Xian's words. When he came to the Emoshanga, the first person he came into contact with was from the 5th palace. However, what kind of fate was this? It was just a coincidence that the people from the 5th palace were in charge of patrolling that day. However, since Yi Xian had already spoken to such an extent, what else could they say? Yi Xian had already said that all the palaces were not his people. Even a new disciple had such awareness. Could it be that the elders, didn't have the same awareness? All right, since Yi Xian has already made his decision, we will respect Yi Xian's decision. Yi Xian, come over here. This is a congratulatory gift from the 2nd hall. Take it as a welcome to our Emotion Pavilion. He said that he would follow Yi Xian's decision, but at this time, he was still trying to rope in Yi Xian. What that person took out was a treasure that even Yi Xian was tempted by. The Ancient Demon's Heart. It's actually the Ancient Demon's Heart. 2nd Hall Elder, you are really generous. Yes, it was the Ancient Demon's Heart. It could be said that this item was a top-notch material for refining one's body. The Ancient Demon referred to the Ancient Demon God. Although the Ancient Demon's Heart in this person's hand was only a Sky Celestial's Ancient Demon's Heart, it was still an incredible item. One had to know that the Ancient Demon God's inheritance was almost completely severed. A Sky Celestial's Ancient Demon's Heart was an extremely rare item. All right, since the 2nd Hall Master is so generous, the 3rd Hall will not be stingy either. Yi Xian, take this item. Yi Xian received the item that the 3rd Hall Elder handed over and was once again slightly shocked. Tree Spirit. It couldn't be. Yi Xian needed 4 types of materials to fuse with the Flower Spirit Swordsman. Yi Xian had originally planned to spend a lot of time collecting them. Who would have thought that he would actually obtain 3? Treasure. This was definitely a treasure. Haha, this is nothing. Today, I'm going to give Yi Xian a great opportunity. Kid, with this token, you'll have a chance to go there to seek opportunities. Take care of yourself. 4th Hall Elder, you actually gave this item to him. What a big deal. Your 4th palace is really generous. Yi Xian held the item that looked like a teleportation talisman in his hand, but he was a little confused. What exactly was this item? Was it worth making such a fuss about? Of course, Yi Xian was very clear that this was definitely a treasure. Hence, no matter what it was, Yi Xian would definitely make good use of it. Come, let's continue. Yi Xian's heart was filled with anticipation. Now that he had obtained 3 items, each of them could be considered a great treasure. There are also the 6 halls. Shouldn't they show some appreciation? Aren't you all competing? Aren't you all trying to compare your strength in front of me? Then, throw treasures at me. I like it. Yi Xian's heart was already twisted with joy, but he still stood there obediently on the surface. Needless to say, other than the 5th hall, the other halls really did leave gifts for Yi Xian. To be honest, this kind of behavior could be considered to be one of a kind. However, a disciple who could make the 9 halls fight over him at the same time was a rare existence in itself. Hence, it was not strange that he would do something that went against common sense. Yixian looked at the 5th hall elder eagerly. Speaking of which, the other halls had already expressed their intentions. So why did the 5th hall elder not do so? It couldn't be that Yixian had chosen the worst hall, right? Then wouldn't Yixian have suffered a great loss? However, at this moment, the disciple who had brought Yixian in at the beginning suddenly blinked at him. Yixian understood that there was a chance. After Yixian's ownership was decided, he immediately left with the 5th hall elder. But halfway there, the 5th hall elder left first, leaving only the disciple to lead the way for Yixian. Yixian did not know why, but he did not ask. After the 5th hall elder left, that disciple immediately laughed heartily. "Aha, good fellow, you struck it big this time. Speaking of which, why didn't such a good thing happen when I first entered the sect?" Senior, please don't make fun of me. Do you think you're still coveting those things of mine? Call me senior brother. I say, kid, you're so obedient after getting such a good deal. In the future, you can just call me senior brother Wang. Kid, you struck it big this time. Why do you think our elder rushed back alone? He went to prepare a gift for you. What? Prepare a gift for him? Yixian was taken aback and stopped in his tracks. Don't be in a daze. Let's go. You've struck it big this time. Even I'm tempted by those things. I'm even considering whether I should find a chance to beat you up with a stick and then snatch all your things after you get your gift. I'm so jealous. Yixian smiled bitterly. This guy was not like this just now. However, since this guy had said it so bluntly, it was obvious that he did not covet Yixian's things at all. Chapter 2180. You pighead, a greeting gift is naturally a greeting gift. Let me tell you, generally speaking, only the palace you join will give you a greeting gift. Occasionally, a genius will attract the attention of the other palaces, and they will also give you a greeting gift. However, such a thing is extremely rare. Moreover, every time the other palaces give you a greeting gift, the palace you join will have to bleed a lot. It must surpass the gifts given by the other palaces. This is the tradition of our Immortal Pavilion. The bitter smile on Yixian's face became more and more awkward. This senior brother Wang, Yixian, was becoming more and more unreliable. Yixian really couldn't tell that this guy was a righteous person just now. When Yixian joined the Immortal Pavilion, this guy immediately revealed his true colors. Pighead. Damn, if Yixian was a pighead, then who in the world wasn't a pighead? However, Yixian could only accept it. Who asked this guy to be so obviously kind? Hehe, I almost forgot. It seems like I have to show my sincerity. It's over, it's over. Then, Yixian, how about we discuss something? What orders does senior brother Wang have? It's not an order, it's a discussion. Can we discuss it? Then, can we pretend that we don't know each other today? Can we get to know each other tomorrow? Yixian was stunned. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This silly senior brother Wang. How could he speak like this? This guy, wasn't he just unwilling to give him a greeting gift? Moreover, it wasn't like he had to give him a greeting gift. Who knew that before Yixian could say anything, senior brother Wang continued to speak. Forget it. Who asked me to be unlucky? How did I become your senior brother? Fine, I admit defeat this time. Here, take this. What a loss. Ding. System notification. Detected special treasure. Spirit of Spirit God Wings. Ding. System notification. Spirit God is not a realm, but a deity cultivated from a special spirit body. Ding. System notification. Spirit of Spirit God Wings possesses powerful auxiliary abilities. Once it recognizes a master, it will give the host unimaginable benefits. Living thing. Object. Yixian was slightly taken aback. He hadn't expected that senior brother Wang would actually give Yixian a sex toy. The most important thing was that this item had actually triggered a system notification. It seemed like it was not a simple item. This, senior brother Wang, I can't accept this. I can tell that senior brother Wang is very fond of it. I can't take away what you love. Sister, don't give me that. I'm sure you can't wait to take it away. Stop grumbling in front of me. Be careful, or I won't give it to you if I regret it. If I tell you to take it, just take it. Cut the crap. Xian was speechless. Even if what he said was the truth, there was no need to say it out loud. Wouldn't make Xian feel awkward? However, Xian was willing to become friends with such a person. Therefore, Xian did not beat around the bush. He said straightforwardly, "All right, then I'll accept it. How about this? If there are any good things in my room, Senior Brother Wang can also choose one." "TSK, you brat. Why would I care about your things? Do you know who my father is?" "My father is the 5th Palace Master." "Oomph, the things I gave you might be my leftovers." Xian almost fell to the ground. Because of this fellow's words, Xian couldn't help but be shocked. He was actually the son of the 5th Palace Master? No wonder he was so arrogant and did not act like a disciple of Mo Shang Pavilion. This guy was probably not an ordinary person in Mo Shang Pavilion. Looking at this Senior Brother Wang in front of him, Xian really did not know what to say. This guy could be considered the first weirdo that Xian had met in the realm of the gods. "All right, so the things you gave me were your leftovers. Then, shouldn't you compensate me?" Perhaps influenced by this guy, Xian spoke with a hint of mockery. Don't think about my things. I don't have anything good to give you. Go play somewhere else. Let's go back quickly." When Senior Brother Wang heard Xian's words, he immediately rushed forward. Xian finally could not hold back his laughter. "You brat, you actually dare to tease me." "Pada!" A slap landed on Xian's shoulder, but Xian laughed even harder. No matter what, this Senior Brother Wang had made Xian relax a lot. At the same time, it also made Xian understand that Mo Shang Pavilion was not completely under the control of the Annihilation Organization. It was likely that the Annihilation Organization only controlled the first palace. In that case, this Senior Brother Wang was worth making friends with Xian. "Haha, let's go, Senior Brother Wang. Let's go back quickly." This time, it was Xian's turn to walk in front. Senior Brother Wang's face was full of displeasure as he spoke angrily. Go my ass. Do you know the way? Follow me." Of course, this only made Xian laugh even harder. Soon, the two of them arrived at the 5th Palace. QWPM, however, what Xian did not expect was that the 5th Palace only had slightly more than 300 people. Compared to the other palaces, which had tens of thousands of people, the 5th Palace's strength was a little weak. However, when Xian looked at Senior Brother Wang, he understood. Senior Brother Wang was probably going to be the successor of the 5th Palace's Palace Master. It was a pity that he looked like this. The 5th Palace was weak and had few people. This was a good thing for Xian. After all, when Xian had entered the 5th Palace, neither Xian nor the system had noticed anything strange. "So you Xian. Not bad. You look quite classy." The 5th Palace Master, who was also Xian's future master, arrived in front of Xian. However, as soon as he spoke, Xian already knew why Senior Brother Wang was so amusing. It was because his father was similar to him. Your disciple greets the master. Xian could not bring himself to feel any negative emotions towards the 5th Palace Master, who knew that this guy would immediately laugh when he heard how Xian addressed him. "Waha, did you hear that? You heard that? You want to steal my disciple? You guys are still too inexperienced. Now that Xian has acknowledged me as his master, you have nothing to say." Xian blinked. Since he had been assigned to the 5th Palace, didn't that mean that the 5th Palace Master was his master? "You brat, who told you that he's your master? Where are you going to learn from him?" Hey, Junior Brother, how can you say that? Why can't I take in disciples?" "Junior Brother, you have to explain yourself. Otherwise, don't even think about walking out of here today." Who knew that the 5th Palace Master would become anxious? However, no one seemed to care about him. The elder continued to speak to Xian. Chapter 2181. Consider my ass. "Junior Brother, you can't sow discord. Be careful, or I'll punish you." Xian, don't listen to him. You're my disciple. I'll beat whoever tries to snatch you away. Hall Master, among the few of us, who can you beat? QWPME. The 5th Palace Master was speechless. What was this? Xian felt like he had been cheated. Why did he feel like he had been cheated after joining the 5th Palace? "What are you all doing gathered here? Not doing anything?" Suddenly, a voice was heard. In an instant, the entire hall fell silent. The fifth palace master was extremely pleased with himself. Mother, Senior Brother Wang, on the other hand, ran over happily. The others also shouted respectfully. Greetings, Senior Sister. Senior Sister, why did you come out early this time? Senior Sister? Mother? She was the fifth palace master's wife? What a beauty! What a high cultivation! Xianxia was shocked. No wonder the fifth palace master was able to sit on the palace master's seat despite his ordinary strength. I heard that a new disciple came to our fifth palace. Of course I had to come out and take a look. In the last 10 times we accepted disciples, no one joined us. I really don't know what you elders are doing. Everyone looked at each other, but their gazes were all on the fifth palace master. Their intentions were obvious. What are you looking at? I'm talking about you, not him. Why? Are you pushing everything to your senior brother? Do you need me to give you some tasks? No, Senior Sister. I still have things to do. I'll go first. Senior Sister, Senior Brother just accepted a disciple. I think you all must have a good celebration. I won't disturb you. Who knew that these people, who were extremely arrogant in front of the fifth palace master, would be so timid in front of the palace master's wife? Stop! The palace master's wife spoke. Instantly, everyone stopped in their tracks. Since you all know that your senior brother has accepted a disciple, and it's the first new disciple of the fifth palace in 100 years, shouldn't you show some appreciation? Was this considered extortion? But it was for Xianxia. Xianxia had an awkward expression on his face. The fifth hall was completely out of Xianxia's expectations. This force seemed to be very interesting. The fifth hall only had a total of 6 elders. Compared to the other halls, their strength was not even worth mentioning. However, it had to be said that life here was much more casual. Of course, the 6 elders seemed to be very afraid of the palace mistress. At this moment, all of them ran up to Xianxia and threw an interspatial ring to him. Obviously, they were prepared. After leaving behind the interspatial rings, the 6 elders left dejectedly. Xianxia found it hilarious. However, someone laughed before Xianxia did. It was Senior Brother Wang. It would be fine if he didn't laugh, but once he did, it would be a tragedy. Tianer, come here. Senior Brother Wang's full name was Wang Tianjin. Yes, he lived up to his name. Ah, Mother, you're looking for me? Yes, let your father and Xianxia have a good chat here. Come with Mother. Mother wants to see if your cultivation has improved. Senior Brother Wang's expression changed drastically. Obviously, he was very afraid. However, after the 2 of them left, the fifth palace master immediately returned to his previous state. Oh my God, they're finally gone. Fortunately, they didn't scold me this time. By the way, Xianxia, you still have 3 senior brothers and 2 senior sisters, but they're all out on missions. This is a meeting gift for you. That group of scammers gave you so many good things and made me bleed. Well, if you have nothing to do, go play by yourself. If you want to cultivate, go directly to the cultivation pavilion and choose whatever you want to learn. Anyway, this old man won't give you anything carelessly. Let me think, is there anything else? Oh, that's right. If you want to go out and play, go look for your senior brother Wang. However, the 2 of you shouldn't go overboard. Otherwise, your master will definitely be taught a lesson by your master's wife. All right, help me keep an eye on your senior brother Wang. This guy is always running to the 7th palace, and he always makes me his scapegoat. Tell him not to go there if he has nothing better to do. Damn it, he's such a disgrace. F***CK. Xianxia was dumbfounded. This was his master? This was Xianxia's F***King master in Immortal Pavilion? Was he really here to teach him how to cultivate? Even when Xianxia walked out of the main hall, he was still in a daze. He had met countless people and received many inheritances, but this was the first time Xianxia had met such an eccentric master. It could be said that he was the only one. When Xianxia walked out, he was even more stunned by the situation outside. The 5th palace had 300 disciples. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small number either. Because of their eccentric palace master, most of the disciples cultivated under the 6 great elders. However, these people's cultivation methods could also be called eccentric. There wasn't the slightest bit of unity that a large sect should have. Instead, they cultivated whatever they wanted, and their treasures were even more bizarre. Yi Xian even wondered if he had entered a camp of eccentrics. He even suspected that he hadn't come to Mo Shang Pavilion. Hey, it's Junior Brother Wang. Ha ha, Junior Brother Yi. Do you want to come with us to the back mountain to hunt for divine beasts? I heard that Li Ju was chased by a divine beast a few days ago. We're going to avenge him. Senior brothers, I won't go. Senior Brother Wang dragged me to the 7th palace. You know Senior Brother Wang's temper. If I don't go, he'll definitely block my door again. Junior Brother Yi, good luck then. I heard that Master's wife is coming out of seclusion in a few days. You too, be careful not to be caught by her. You'll be in trouble then. Yes, thank you for the reminder, Senior Brother. Yi Xian had been in the 5th palace for some time. However, during this time, Yi Xian truly understood how casual the 5th palace was. If you wanted to cultivate, then cultivate. No one would care. If you didn't want to cultivate, then it didn't matter. After Master's wife came out of seclusion, those who didn't make any progress would be punished. In the entire 5th palace, from the palace master to the ordinary disciples, the only one they were afraid of was Master's wife. However, Master's wife cultivated a special cultivation method that allowed her to be in seclusion at all times. It could be said that if it weren't for the fact that she was worried about the 5th palace, Master's wife wouldn't have come out of seclusion so frequently. However, when their Master's wife came out, all of them, including the palace master, were cultivating obediently. However, when their Master's wife went into closed-door cultivation, all of them revealed their true colors. It could be said that the 5th palace was truly not a place suitable for cultivation. Of course, Yi Xian didn't care about this. After all, he didn't come here to cultivate. But to be honest, it was this kind of environment that made Yi Xian feel a strong sense of belonging. Chapter 2182. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Hey, Yi Xian, hurry up. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Do you think I'm you? Do you think I'd dare to come out if I didn't complete the task given to me by Master's wife? But I heard that Master's wife is coming out of seclusion. Let's see how you're going to explain yourself. Mother is coming out of seclusion. Yi Xian, don't scare me. What's the benefit of scaring you? No. But Kong Yue and the others are going to Mo City to play today. I want to go too. Who cares? Anyway, I've completed my task. I'm not afraid. At this moment, the person in front of Yi Xian was none other than Wang Tiantian. During this period, Yi Xian's wife had been paying close attention to this genius disciple. It could be said that she knew very well what kind of place the 5th palace was. Therefore, every time she came out, she would definitely set a cultivation task for Yi Xian. Fortunately, Yi Xian wasn't worried at all, with the devouring system in hand. As long as Yi Xian had the resources, leveling up wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, Yi Xian became the person who leveled up the fastest in the 5th palace. In just half a year, it was difficult for the others to even improve their cultivation, let alone level up. However, Yi Xian had already reached the peak of the intermediate divine realm. Of course, this was mainly because the 5th palace master, the 6 great elders, and the other senior brothers had taken good care of Yi Xian. Wang Tianjin took out another treasure and handed it to Yi Xian. Here you go. Hee, good stuff for refining the body. My dad got me 2. One for you, and the other for me. Well, let's make a deal. You have to tell me when the time comes that I've been cultivating with you every day. I say, Senior Brother Wang, do you think Master's wife will believe me? I don't care. At worst, I'll cultivate tomorrow. No matter what, we have to go to Mo City today. Come, let's go. Yi Xian didn't say anything. He was indeed preparing to leave for a while. During this period of time, he had been staying in the 5th hall and had not gone to see Fian. He also did not know how Fian was doing recently. Soon, they met up with Kong Yu and the others from the 7th palace and headed to Mo City together. The 7th palace was a branch that was almost entirely made up of female disciples. The rule of the 7th palace was that female disciples were easy to accept, but male disciples, unless they were peerless geniuses, could not even dream of entering. However, in reality, there were very few male disciples who were recognized. This was also the reason why Wang Tianjin liked to run to the 7th palace. Junior brother Yi, is also here? That's great. Our Jia Ling has been looking forward to seeing junior brother Wang every day. Yi Xian had become familiar with this group of senior sisters since a long time ago. As for Ling, she was cute, and her cultivation had even attained the high-rank domain Enlightened Spirit God Realm. She could be considered to be extremely formidable. However, it just so happened that she'd taken a liking to Yi Xian as soon as she laid eyes on Yi Xian. Yi Xian's usual way of doing things was to ignore them. This time was no exception as well, and he just smiled lightly. Senior brothers and senior sisters, I'm afraid I can't go with all of you this time. I intend to go to a place by myself. Junior brother Yi, where are you going? It was Ling who spoke these words, and her eyes were filled with concern. Oh, the place I'm going to isn't a secret. It's just the Mo City training camp. Everyone knows that I came from the Mo City training camp in the beginning, so I intend to go back and take a look. Is that so? All right, feel free to go there, junior brother Yi. We'll send you a voice transmission when we return. Yi Xian nodded and directly left by himself. The benefit of being with this group of people was freedom. This group of disciples from the Mo City Pavilion seemed to be carefree all day long, because practically all of them were the children of the Mo City Pavilion's elders, or even the hallmaster. There was no pressure to cultivate here at all, and they didn't have the worry of finding resources. Perhaps ordinary disciples would have to risk their lives to obtain treasures, but they only had to ask their parents to obtain them. Yi Xian wasn't on the same side as them, but he could only join them because of Wang Tianjin. QWPM, of course, this was also to make it easier to investigate the secrets of the Mo City Pavilion. Unfortunately, it seemed that no one in the inner and outer 9 great halls knew about the first hall. The first hall seemed to be an isolated world. People only knew that everyone there was incomparably powerful. People only knew that as long as one was ambitious, one would want to enter the first hall. But they didn't know what was there. Of course, Yi Xian had set up layers of restrictions in Fian's residence. At the same time, Yi Xian also left enough cultivation resources for Fian. However, Yi Xian still couldn't let it go after such a long time. In other people's eyes, half a year might be just a blink of an eye, but in Yi Xian's eyes, half a year was indeed very long. Girl, are you there? Young master. Why have you come to my place today? Could it be that something happened? Can I come see you if there's nothing? All right, are you used to this place? Young master has given me such a good cultivation environment. How can I not be satisfied? Young master can rest assured. I can cultivate here in peace. That's good. Yi Xian nodded. He wasn't really worried about anything. After all, once he cultivated, time passed very quickly. Only he, Yi Xian, didn't need to cultivate, so he had nothing to do every day. Suddenly, from Yi Xian's side, a stream of light flew straight to Fian. Whether it was Yi Xian or Fian, there were some differences. However, when he saw the stream of light, Yi Xian was even more puzzled. Wasn't this the spirit, God-winged spirit, that senior brother Wang gave to Yi Xian? One had to know that during this period of time, it wasn't that Yi Xian hadn't studied this thing, but it didn't seem to be of any use. But today, he didn't expect that he would take the initiative to fly to Fian's side. Where did young master get this thing? He didn't expect Fian, who had always been calm, to be so excited when she saw the winged spirit. This was given to me by a senior brother when I didn't go to the pavilion today. Why? Does the girl like it? If you like it, you can take it. Really? Then, this little girl thanks young master. Fian didn't refuse, and Yi Xian didn't mind. To be honest, Yi Xian had never understood the use of this winged spirit. Moreover, he didn't want to use the system. Now that he was fated with Fian, Yi Xian wouldn't be stingy. However, the next scene caused Yi Xian to be rather surprised. Fian seemed to have said a few strange words to the winged spirit. The winged spirit instantly turned into a pair of invisible wings and directly merged with Fian. This thing was actually a pair of wings. Yi Xian was greatly surprised. If he hadn't seen Fian, no one would have been able to discover this secret. Whether it was in Wang Tian's hands or in Yi Xian's hands, This winged spirit had always been treated as an ornamental object. Chapter 2183. Of course, the wings were secondary. The key was Xian's strength. She actually broke through to the peak of the heavenly god realm in one go. She directly surpassed Xian. Xian could be considered to have thoroughly experienced what was called opportunity. This was called opportunity. In the fifth palace, he often obtained some treasures, but his cultivation had only just reached the peak of the intermediate heavenly god realm. However, in the blink of an eye, Xian directly advanced to the peak of the upper-level heavenly god realm. This speed of advancement was simply even crazier than Xian. Of course, Xian was still happy for Xian's advancement. After continuing to chat with Xian for a while, Xian received Wang Tianjin's voice transmission. It turned out that Master's wife had come out of seclusion early. She found that Wang Tianjin was not here and was currently angry. Xian smiled slightly. This time, there would be a good show to watch when he went back. Hee, girl, you stay here and cultivate well. I'll go back first. Yes, young master. Xian nodded. Only after sending Xian off did she turn around and go back. Xian and quickly found Wang Tianjin. At this time, Wang Tianjin's face was not looking good. It's over, it's over. Xian, it's over. This time, I'll definitely be punished. Why did mother come out of seclusion early? I'm dead for sure. Huh, I seen your brother Wang. When you came out, I reminded you. You disloyal fellow. Do you really want to see me make a fool of myself? That's right. Why don't we just say that I'm here to accompany you, and you're here to take a look at Mo Shang's training camp? Senior brother, I'm fine. However, I'm afraid that Master's wife still won't let you off. Then what should I do? Xian, junior brother Yi, quickly help me think of a way. Don't look at me. I have no way anyway. Xian shrugged. This action was something he had learned from Wang Tianjin. You're such a boring guy. It's over. It's really over this time. Even if Xian had a solution, he naturally wouldn't help him. This guy had never been willing to focus on cultivation. Although this wasn't a bad thing, the god realm was filled with danger. Let's not talk about the distant future. Let's talk about the Lingbo Lake. Sooner or later, the matter would blow up. If he really encountered danger one day, Wang Tianjin wouldn't be able to survive without any means of defense. Therefore, Xian was actually very supportive of his master's wife controlling Wang Tian. After returning to the fifth palace, as expected, Wang Tianjin was dragged out for the test. But surprisingly, Xian was also dragged out. However, the person who pulled him back was not his master's wife, but his master. Master, where are you taking me? Xian was a little puzzled. Usually, this master of his would not bother with such matters. What was going on today? Aya, hurry up. If you're late, you'll be in trouble. Xian had no choice but to run after his master. But when Xian arrived, he found that there were already many disciples there, and it seemed that they were all waiting for him. Xian, I thought you were going to give up this opportunity. Luckily, you arrived on time. Xian's name was quite well known in the Mo Shang Pavilion. Mo Shang Training Camp. First place on the genius ranking. The moment he arrived, the 9 great palaces fought over him. In just half a year, he had risen several levels. It could be said that anything that happened when Xian sat down was shocking. Therefore, even if Xian did not want to be famous, it would be difficult. Greetings, Uncle Master. All right, I won't say any more nonsense. I don't have much confidence in which mystic realm you're going to this time. Now, take out your battlefield teleportation talismans. You must remember that you're going to the ruins of the battlefield of the gods. Although there are countless opportunities there, there are also countless dangers. Therefore, no matter which one of you is there, once you meet your companions, you must stick together. In the battlefield of the gods, no sect can interfere. Therefore, fighting is inevitable. Do you understand? Battlefield of the gods? What's that? Xian was momentarily unable to react. Fortunately, his master reminded him in time. It turned out that when Xian had just joined the sect, an elder had given him something that seemed like a teleportation talisman, and it was the proof of passage to the battlefield of the gods. After every single battle between the overgods, it was unavoidable that many treasures would be left behind on the battlefield. So, under the tacit agreement of the overgods on both sides, such a trial was held. Of course, only those below the domain enlightened spirit god realm could enter, and they would be responsible for everything after they entered, whether they lived or died, or whether they were able to obtain any fortuitous encounters. All depended on their own luck. Xian was overjoyed when he found out about the situation. The battlefield of the gods, it's actually the battlefield of the gods. Even if he was only at the heavenly god realm and could only enter the outer battlefield, it was absolutely a rare opportunity. All right, all of you take care of yourselves. The battlefield has been opened, and all of you can enter. Along with these words, all of them crushed their battlefield teleportation talismans. To be honest, these things were very difficult to obtain, and they could only be bestowed by the overgods. Even though there seemed to be over 100 people in possession of these teleportation talismans, there would definitely be hundreds of thousands of people entering if all the organizations from the overgods' worlds were included. However, the battlefield of the overgods was extremely vast, and these hundreds of thousands of people really wouldn't be able to cause much of a stir. After the battle ended, it was unavoidable that both sides would send people to clean up the battlefield first. In that case, there would be even fewer things left behind. However, this was the battlefield of the overgods after all, and even the weakest soldier was a peak heavenly god. If they could obtain even a single treasure, it would be a great profit. If they could obtain a ring of cosmos, it would be a great fortune. Xian hadn't even understood what was going on when he was urged to crush his teleportation talisman. The only thing he knew was that once they entered the battlefield of the overgods, they could clean up the battlefield to their heart's content. The way to leave was to find the teleportation portal that they had left behind. Xian knew nothing about anything else. This was an opportunity, but it was also a risk. Every time they entered the battlefield of the overgods, less than a third of the people would return alive. However, all those who returned would advance by leaps and bounds, obtaining great benefits. As a result, this was why no organization would hesitate at all when they received the notice that the battlefield of the overgods had opened. They would all send their most elite disciples over. There was a flash of light, and when Xian returned to his senses, he had already appeared in a strange place. There was no sun in the sky here, but it was extremely bright. There were many fortresses erected here. These were the strongholds left behind during the battle. Chapter 2184. Xian was at a loss. He did not know what to do next. Suddenly, there was a burst of bright light in the distance. That light pierced through the clouds. It was so dazzling. Treasure. Xian was shocked. He did not expect to find a treasure as soon as he arrived. Without any hesitation, Xian's figure quickly charged forward. What treasure was that? What kind of treasure could emit such a bright light? It must be something extraordinary. Xian was extremely fast. Soon, he rushed into the fortress that was emitting the light. The fortress was huge, and the materials used to build it were not ordinary. However, at this moment, it was extremely dilapidated. There were many broken walls, as if it was describing the cruelty of the battle. There were bloodstains everywhere. This also told Xian that there had been a large-scale battle here. Of course, most of the corpses had been collected by the two parties. Boom! Suddenly, without any warning, a powerful force exploded and attacked Xian. Ding! Detected that the host is under a powerful attack. The system notification sounded. Xian did not hesitate and dodged to the side. A huge black beam of light hit the spot where Xian was standing. In an instant, the ground cracked. Who? Xian was furious. Someone had sneakily attacked him. This was unforgivable. You can actually dodge my attack. Human kid, your luck is not bad. A voice sounded. Xian had also locked on to the location. A figure covered in a huge black cloak walked out. He was 3 meters tall and had 6 arms. This meant that he was not human. System, what kind of monster is this? Ding. System checking. Ding. System notification. This person is from the Shura tribe. Host, please be careful. Shura tribe? What kind of tribe is that? Ding. System notification. The Shura tribe is a branch of the demon tribe. The Shura tribe has special divine powers. Host, please be careful. So that was it. Who would have thought that Yi Xian would meet a foreign god again in the Master God's battlefield? However, what was going on with the Azura tribe? Could it be a race under the command of another overgod? Yi Xian couldn't be sure. After all, an overgod's world was huge. Yi Xian wouldn't know if there were any foreign races in the overgod's world. However, there was one thing that he was sure of. Since this guy had attacked him, he could not be a friend. System, how is his strength? Ding. System notification. This person is a superior grade 5 heavenly god. High level 5 heavenly god? Yi Xian was now a pinnacle mid-level heavenly god, which meant that he was a mid-level 9th level heavenly god. There was only a difference of 5 levels between them. In that case, Yi Xian had the confidence to take him down. You dare to sneak attack me. Yi Xian looked at the Azura tribesman. He had already drawn the God Slayer and was ready to fight at any moment. Haha, human brat, sneak attacking you? How did I sneak attack you? I wanted to kill you fair and square. I'll give you 2 choices. First, leave behind your Qian Kuan ring and all the treasures on you. Then, you can leave here alive. Second, if you can't bear to part with the treasures, then I'll come and take them myself. What an arrogant tone. Why? Did he think that just because Yi Xian's cultivation level was lower than his, he could defeat Yi Xian? Haha, sure. I'll give you another choice. Hand over your shard of godhood, and I'll spare your life. Yi Xian said calmly, but his tone was cold. You're courting death. Seeing that Yi Xian had decided to resist, the Azura tribesman instantly went into battle mode. Each of his 6 hands held a magic treasure. He controlled all 6 magic treasures to attack Yi Xian at the same time. Suppress. Boom. QWPMA, huge mountain suddenly appeared and pressed down on Yi Xian. This was the Azura tribesman's #1 magic treasure, Mountain Suppression. A special mountain peak was sealed in this magic treasure. Once it was used, it could crush the enemy with absolute power. Fortunately, the system had activated its warning system. Hence, Yi Xian had already dodged the attack when Mountain Hill Town launched its attack. Hence, Yi Xian was not hurt. However, as soon as the first attack arrived, the Azura tribesmen's attacks began to come one after another. Slash! Rip! A huge wave of sword chi rushed towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian had no time to dodge. Fortunately, the sword chi's power was average and the god-slaying sword's defense was enough to block it. However, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to dodge the next attack. The magic treasures on this fellow's 6 hands were all extraordinary. The 6 magic treasures took turns to attack, and for a moment, they actually caused Yi Xian to continuously retreat. He could only defend and didn't have the ability to counterattack. Damn it! Yi Xian was shocked. If this continued, he would definitely lose. 1,000 Beasts, Sword Servant. Yi Xian did not hesitate. He summoned the 1,000 Beasts, Sword Servant. As soon as the 1,000 Beasts, Sword Servant appeared, it used its ultimate move. 1,000 Beasts attack. God level mount. Crush him. Boom. 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 God level mounts appeared one after another. As soon as they appeared, they charged towards the Azura tribesmen. The earth-shattering aura caused the Azura clansmen who were caught off guard to be aghast. Human boy, you can summon so many powerful beasts. You must have some special magic treasures on you. However, from today onwards, those magic treasures are mine. Do you think you're the only one who can summon more beasts? I could do it too. Come out, my partner, Azura. Xianxia. This guy had also summoned his war beasts, but they were not divine beasts. They were Azura and Xianxia. Kid, I'll let you experience the might of the Azura and Xianxia I meticulously refined. Ha! My 2 little darlings have not eaten fresh human flesh for a very long time. You should be honored to be able to become their food. Only an idiot would be willing to become the food of these 2 ugly monsters. Yi Xian's brows raised when he heard this. He paid no attention to the Azura tribesmen at all, and he just urged his mount to charge over. In next to no time, his mount had entered into battle with the Azura and Xianxia. However, those 2 fellows were monsters with 6 hands as well. Moreover, They possess cultivations at the domain enlightened spirit god realm. For a time, Yixian's mount was unable to defeat them, not to mention that he had the help of the Azura tribesmen. It could be said that having 6 hands was much more advantageous than having 2. However, so what? Suddenly, Yixian tossed the Godslayer over. Wei Zhentian directly took control of the Godslayer and joined the battle. The Godslayer was a sword, so it could disregard many Azura tribesmen's attacks. However, with Wei Zhentian as its artifact spirit, the Godslayer was able to erupt with extremely formidable combat strength, and the Azura tribesman was utterly unable to defend against it. 2 rays of light shot out at the same time. It was the Godslayer's slash. However, their targets were the Azura and Xianxia. Chapter 2185. To be more precise, it was an instant kill. It wasn't strange for critical strikes to occur. After all, the Godslayer would naturally erupt with critical strikes when facing a Xenorace expert. However, it was quite rare for both swords to trigger the one-hit kill effect. My Azura, my Xianxia, damn it. Human kid, I'll kill you. The Azura clansman was simply on the verge of going mad when he saw his 2 combat beasts being killed. With his cultivation, refining domain enlightened spirit god realm Azuras and Yixia's wasn't so easy. Unlike the human race, the Azura clan had a tradition that only their own things could be refined. In other words, he'd gone through great difficulty and danger to refine these 2 Azura and Wuxia, and they were his greatest pride. It was precisely by relying on his ability to surmount his realm of cultivation to refine Azura and Wuxia that he'd obtained the opportunity to enter the High God battlefield. At this moment, how could he not be furious when he saw his greatest pride being killed so easily by Yixian? Unfortunately, so what if he was furious? He was completely surrounded by God rank mounts now, and Wei Zhentian was controlling the Godslayer and preparing to launch a surprise attack at any moment. In such a situation, the Azura clansman was already destined to be defeated. However, Yixian didn't have any intention to kill him right away. After all, it was the first time Yixian had encountered an Azura clansman, so who knew if he would encounter one in the future? This Azura clansman was clearly slightly careless. So, Yixian needed to know more about the Azura clan. Spiritual sense control. Yixian directly activated spiritual sense control. This fellow was completely surrounded by God rank mounts now, and he had to fight with all his might. So, he wasn't able to defend himself in time when he was suddenly invaded by divine sense. In merely the blink of an eye, Yixian had taken complete control of him. Master, the God rank mounts retreated while the Godslayer returned to Yixian's side. On the other hand, the Azura clansman had already knelt on the ground. Yixian didn't take control of this fellow forever. In Yixian's opinion, taking control of this fellow forever wouldn't benefit him at all. All right, tell me everything you know about the Azura tribe. Yixian collected all kinds of magic treasures and cosmos rings from the Azura clan member while listening to his narration. As expected, he wasn't someone from Yixian's over God's world. He was from a different race. Yixian learned from the Azura tribesmen that there were countless races in the Master God's realm, and the human tribe was the lowest in status. Yixian seemed to have understood why he, the Lord God, kept waging war. Damn it, damn it. Suddenly, that guy let out an extremely angry roar. Are you awake now? Then you can die now. This time, Yixian's control lasted less than 2 hours. Although Yixian managed to obtain some information during this time, it was still too short. It seemed that the spiritual sense control skill still had some flaws. Of course, now is not the time to talk about this. The God-slaying sword flew out abruptly and killed that person with a single slash. Devouring hand. Yixian couldn't devour the body of the Azura tribesman, but Azura and Wuxia could. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through. You are now a first-class superior divine god. Previously, Yixian had devoured many magic treasures. This time, after devouring the bodies of Azura and Wuxia, he unexpectedly broke through to the intermediate divine god realm. What a popper. I thought he would give me something good, but there's nothing. Yi Xian looked at the Azura tribesman's Cosmos ring and felt a little depressed. Most of the items in this guy's Cosmos ring were black stones. Most importantly, they were of no use to Yi Xian. Fortunately, Yi Xian's target wasn't this Azura tribesman. After dealing with this person, Yi Xian quickly walked towards the interior of the ruins. Just what kind of treasure was able to emit such a powerful light just now? However, when Yi Xian arrived, he was shocked to find that there was no treasure at all. This was all a scam by the Azura tribesman. He had deliberately used a special method to emit the treasure light in order to attract people here so that he could kill them and steal the treasure. Yi Xian didn't know if this guy's trick had worked before, but this time he had targeted Yi Xian. Obviously, he had targeted the wrong person. However, although Yi Xian knew that there was no treasure here, the others didn't. Therefore, Yi Xian wasn't the only one who had been attracted by the treasure light. It's here. The treasure must be inside. A group of people rushed over. These guys were quite lucky. At least they weren't like Yi Xian, who had been transported here alone. However, they were also unlucky. They didn't expect to find Yi Xian instead of the treasure they were looking for. Someone's here? Looks like someone got here first. Kid, hand over the treasure and you can leave. Otherwise, we can only do it ourselves. All of these people were at the domain Enlightened Spirit God Realm. Yi Xian knew that it was useless even if he tried to explain himself, because in their eyes, they were certain that he had seized the treasure. I know. Let me tell all of you that I've just arrived here and haven't noticed anything. You'll definitely not believe me. However, I'm telling the truth. There really is nothing here. Kid, do you think we'll believe you just because you say that? Hand over the treasure and you can leave. Otherwise, you can dream of leaving alive today. Yi Xian shook his head. His god rank mount had entered a period of cooldown, so it was utterly impossible for Yi Xian to deal with so many of them by himself. Looks like I can only retreat for now. I told you that there are no treasures here. As for whether you believe me or not, that's your problem. Megatron. Even though Megatron had become the artifact spirit of the Godslayer's sword, he hadn't lost his original ability. So, Yi Xian directly summoned Megatron and transformed it into a flying sword. QWPM, perhaps treasures like flying swords had really fallen behind in the God Realm. However, it wasn't impossible to use them in some special environments. For example, it would be inconvenient to utilize large magic treasures like flying boats within the ruins of the fort. Yi Xian didn't waste any time, and he directly leaped on a Megatron and fled at full speed. Pursue him. Damn it. This fellow definitely seized the treasure. Pursue him, and the treasure will be ours. When they saw Yi Xian flee directly, they were even more certain that Yi Xian was the person that seized the treasure here. In an instant, numerous rays of light appeared incessantly, and it was those people who were controlling their flying magic treasures to pursue Yi Xian. Unfortunately, they'd underestimated Yi Xian's speed. Yi Xian didn't know how much time had passed, but fortunately, he'd already escaped his pursuers. However, Yi Xian could simply be said to have been in a panic just now, and he hadn't carefully observed where he was heading at all. Chapter 2186. Unknowingly, he had actually charged into the core region of the battlefield. It should be known that in the Master God's battlefield, super experts would fall at any time. Even though the Master God's battlefield was a supreme existence created by two Master Gods, the chaos inside was still unimaginable to ordinary people. In the battlefield of the sovereigns, the most dangerous thing was not the other people fighting for treasures, nor were the traps that could appear at any time. QWPM instead, it was endless negative emotions. Ding. System prompt, please take note. Host, please take note. Host, please leave this place immediately. Otherwise, your mind will be eroded by the endless killing intent, and you may even lose your nature. The system's warning sounded. Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. Without any hesitation, he released his divine sense and set up a strong protection around his body. At least this way, he could resist the endless killing intent for a short period of time. In the core zone, endless killing intent and countless remnant thoughts filled the entire space. These were all left behind by the super experts. Madness, bloodshed, brutality, wailing, crying, and other negative emotions filled the core zone of the creator space. From time to time, the echoes of the experts' battles could be heard. What was the echo of battle? Echoes were easy to understand, and the echoes of battle referred to the various powerful attacks unleashed by some super experts during battle. Even after millions of years, there would still be traces of them. Back then, the sword intent in the Lingbo Lake was actually a kind of echo. One could only imagine how terrifying this was. Xian didn't dare to make the slightest movement. He didn't feel it when he rushed in, but now, Xian knew how terrifying this place was. Dying. Boom! A bolt of lightning exploded in an instant, shattering even the void. However, this was not real. It was an illusion that possessed great power. Xian clearly knew that it was just a replay of the battle. However, he'd only seen it once and was intimidated by the auras of the two experts. Pucci. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Xian was seriously injured. So powerful. They were really strong. Even though they had been dead for tens of thousands of years, the afterimages they left behind were still able to severely injure Xian. Xian knew that if he stayed, he would only be waiting for death. Therefore, no matter how dangerous it was, Xian had to leave this place. On the side of Xian, there was the ruins of a fortress. Clearly, a battle had broken out there. It could be said that the more dangerous a place was, the more dangerous it was. However, Xian had no other choice. If Xian stayed outside, the afterimages of battle that could appear at any time, or even the corrosion of killing intent and negative emotions would be enough to kill him. However, if they went to the fortress, they would have some hope of surviving. This was a test. Either Xian could find a way to survive in the ruins of the fortress, or Xian would be left outside to die. As for which choice to make, it was already very obvious. Between waiting for death and taking a gamble, Xian naturally chose the latter. Ding! Warning! Warning! Please leave this place immediately. Please leave this place immediately. The system kept sending out warnings, but Xian could only smile bitterly. Of course, he wanted to leave, but he could only take one step at a time. First of all, the pressure here made it impossible for Xian to move at full speed. Just the inexplicable echo attacks that appeared from time to time were enough to force Xian to move forward slowly. Boom! A loud sound rang in his ears. Xian didn't need to turn around to know that it was just an afterimage of a battle. However, even if he knew, what could he do? The pressure from the afterimage still injured Xian. Move forward, step by step, constantly moving forward. Xian had no choice. Everything depended on the will of the heavens. Perhaps the will of the heavens was still on Xian's side. Therefore, he successfully entered the ruins of the fortress. Just as Xian had expected, there were more and more afterimages here, and Xian was injured time and time again. Xian was helpless. He could only grit his teeth and move forward. There was nothing else he could do. These attacks were not targeted at Xian. These attacks were just afterimages, and they were just afterimages, but they were already enough to make Xian so miserable. One could imagine how powerful these afterimages were left behind by powerful experts. One could also imagine how cruel this battlefield of the sovereigns was. Xian's divine consciousness was attacked time and time again. There were even a few times when it was almost broken through. If his divine consciousness defense was broken through, it was possible that in the blink of an eye, Xian would be corroded by the killing intent here and turn into a walking corpse. As for Xian's body, it was even worse. It was damaged time and time again, and then repaired time and time again with the help of his powerful bloodline. However, before the wounds from the last time could be completely healed, new wounds would arrive. If someone saw Xian's appearance now, they would probably not be able to confirm whether he was a person or not. This was because apart from his silhouette, he did not look like a person at all. This was the battlefield of the sovereigns, a powerful and cruel battlefield of the sovereigns. There's light. Suddenly, Xian saw a ray of light in front of him. It seemed to be something like a door. Xian was not in the mood to investigate. He walked in almost instinctively. However, the moment he walked in, he fainted. After an indeterminate amount of time, or, at least, Yi Xian did not know how much time had passed. Finally, Yi Xian's body moved slightly. With the help of his powerful bloodline, Yi Xian, who was about to lose all signs of life, finally woke up. However, Yi Xian was still extremely weak. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. This time, he had suffered a great loss. Most importantly, he did not know how to get out of here again. He could not possibly be trapped here forever. Ding! System notification. Host has triggered the effect of life and death refinement. Body's recovery ability has temporarily decreased. Ding! System notification. Host has suffered a serious injury. Host cultivation level has temporarily decreased. Host's current cultivation level has dropped to lower rank 1 True God. Another piece of bad news. Then, what other bad news was there? Why not say all at once? Fortunately, there wasn't any bad news after that. Ding! System notification. Host, please take note. Host has entered a special sealed space. Special sealed space? What did that mean? Yi Xian sat up. Currently, Yi Xian was extremely weak. However, the situation around him made him feel strange. At first, Yi Xian did not notice it. However, now, Yi Xian realized that the place he was in was like a water surface. There were stars in the sky. The reflection under the water surface was another starry sky. What was going on? Chapter 2187. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Other than the surface of the lake, there was nothing else. Even Yi Xian was lying on the surface of the lake. Where was this place? Yi Xian stood up and casually walked a few steps. At this moment, he was surrounded by stars. It was a very strange feeling. If not for Yi Xian being able to walk around here, he would have suspected that he had fallen into the stars. Suddenly, just as Yi Xian was feeling puzzled, a huge illusory figure appeared. The figure was so huge that just one eye was enough to make Yi Xian feel like it was comparable to a planet. Even Yi Xian could not see the full extent of the illusory figure. Finally, it was only 7 words, but the illusory figure spoke for almost 2 hours. These 7 words had been spoken for 2 hours. One could imagine how Yi Xian felt. "Who are you?" Yi Xian asked. However, he regretted at the moment the words left his mouth because he knew that it would take at least 2 hours for the illusory figure to reply. Who am I? You actually asked who I am? You came into my space. Don't you know who I am? I am Mirror Image Fate. Sure enough, Yi Xian's prediction was right. This time, he waited for half a day. Yi Xian was about to doze off from waiting. Yi Xian was speechless at the way the illusory figure was talking. Yi Xian did not dare to ask any random questions in the following conversation. He had to get to the point. How can I leave this place? Yi Xian asked the question he wanted to know the most. If you want to leave this place, it's very simple. As long as you can walk out, as long as you can subdue me, then you can come out. Wasn't this nonsense? Yi Xian was speechless. If he could walk out, would he still need this guy to tell him? Helpless, Yi Xian could only get up and start investigating. This investigation lasted for 2 whole days. However, they didn't find anything during these 2 days. However, 2 days later, that voice sounded again. I can give you a hint. As long as you can defeat the 8 guardians inside and outside the realm, you'll be able to walk out. After all this time, that guy was just taking a breather. Damn it. While he was taking a breather, Yi Xian had already spent 2 days here. Right now, Yi Xian was basically certain that he was actually in the space of the mirror image fate. This was also why it was so difficult for him to converse with the shadow. Who would have thought that Yi Xian, who had come here to search for treasures, would fall into the treasure space before he could find any? However, without this mirror image fate, Yi Xian would probably be in for a tragedy. QWPM defeating the 8 great protectors? Fortunately, the goal was quite clear. This way, Yi Xian would not be too confused. With a target in mind, Yi Xian knew what to do next. In the beginning, Yi Xian had thought that the 8 great protectors were the shadow of the artifact spirit of mirror image fate, because a magic treasure could only have one artifact spirit. Therefore, Yi Xian naturally thought that it was the shadow of the artifact's spirit. However, when Yi Xian really met the first guardian, he realized that he was the one who had misunderstood. This guardian was a kind of inheritance. If one said that it was a living being, it indeed had the characteristics of a living being. If one said that it was an object, it was indeed an object. Yi Xian did not know what it was at all, and the so-called defeat was not entirely a battle. From a moment he saw the first guardian, Yi Xian already knew. Little guy, welcome to my world. I don't care who you are, nor can I do anything about it. However, since you can come to mirror image fate, then it is fate between you and me. I was originally one of the 10 great generals under the Master God, but I fell into an enemy's ambush and died here. At the last moment, I used my natal magic treasure to refine mirror image fate. I did so because I did not want this mirror image ultimate skill to end in my hands. Little guy, I don't know what your potential is like, so I set up an eternal seal. If you can learn my mirror image mystique, then you can leave this place. However, if you can't learn it, you will stay here forever until your divine meridians dry up. The mirror image mystique is divided into 7 levels. The first 7 inherited mirror images each have a level of inheritance, and the 8th inherited mirror image is a puppet that I refined. As long as you can defeat it, you can leave this place, and mirror image fate will be gifted to you as well. Work hard. Inheritance, mirror image mystique, treasure hunting. However, Yi Xian did not expect that he would find the treasure in such a way. From this moment onwards, Yi Xian could only choose to cultivate. This was because if he wanted to leave, there was no other way but to learn the mirror image mystique. Time flew by like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. At this moment, in the outside world, Xianxia's 5th Hall Master was pleading in despair. Senior brother, wait a little longer. Wait a month. This is the last month. I believe that Yi Xian will be fine. He will definitely be able to come out. Behind the 5th Hall Master, almost all the disciples of the 5th Hall had gathered. Today was the day that the Master God's battlefield would close. 1 year. If Yi Xian had not come out after 1 year, then it was basically certain that he would not be able to come out. The flow of time in the Master God's space was different from the outside world. After all, it was built for battle. Therefore, 1 day in the outside world was 50 days in the Master God space. In other words, although it had only been a year in the outside world, Yi Xian had been trapped for a full 50 years. In the Master God's world, Gu was only a small faction. Naturally, they could only enter the outermost regions. Even if their disciples wanted to enter further, their cultivation was not enough. In the Master God's battlefield, there were countless teleportation portals. This was because every ruined fortress had a teleportation portal. In fact, no disciples had returned in the past half a year. The suggestion to close the teleportation portals had not just been made today. It was because of the 5th Hall's insistence that it had been delayed until now. Junior brother, I know that you are worried about your disciple. However, it has already been a year. If Yi Xian still hasn't come out, I'm afraid that he has already met his end. You know that maintaining the teleportation portals requires a large amount of resources. We can't just wait here and do nothing. Senior brother, just 1 month. It's the last month. Furthermore, the 5th Hall will provide all the resources. If Yi Xian still hasn't come out after a month, I will not stop you. Sai, all right. Since you are willing to use your own resources to maintain the teleportation portals, I won't say anything. You are on your own now. Yi Xian had no idea what his cheat master was doing for him outside. At this moment, Yi Xian had already successfully learned the 7th level of the mirror image mystique and was preparing for the final challenge. Chapter 2188. What an impressive mirror image mystique. System, did you see that? This mirror image mystique is too powerful. Yi Xian was very excited. He only knew how powerful this mirror image mystique was after he learned it. Yi Xian did not know what kind of person had invented this mirror image mystique, but he knew that this mystique should not exist in this world. In fact, even the system could not analyze the mystery behind this mystique. According to the system, this mystique could only be created by someone who had a basic understanding of the laws of time and space. It could be said that even a Lord God would not be able to create something like this. So, what kind of mystique was this? Simply put, it was a double copy. Yi Xian could use this mystique to duplicate anything. As long as he had the resources, even if Yi Xian had to duplicate the system, he could do it. As for duplicating anything else, there was no need to even mention it. Of course, duplicating the system was just a fantasy. The amount of resources required would probably not be enough, even if the entire realm of the gods was packed up. It was also because the system could only perform a simple analysis that Yi Xian had to spend so much time on it. At this moment, Yi Xian only needed resources. As long as he had the resources, he could duplicate anything he wanted. What a terrifying mystique. It could be said that it was a miraculous mystique. In mirror image fate, he could duplicate anything that Yi Xian wanted. After all, these were all virtual. Therefore, Yi Xian had successfully duplicated everything he had, except for the system, in preparation for the final challenge. Yi Xian could not imagine what the final challenge would be like, but he knew that it would not be simple. Was it finally time for the final challenge? Yi Xian looked at the final figure in front of him with a cold gaze. This battle was the time to verify Yi Xian's achievements during this period. What he gained would depend on this final battle. Congratulations, you finally reached this step. If you can defeat the shadow in front of you, you can leave this place. If you can't, you should know the consequences. In order to be fair to you, your virtual Qingquan world will have the same resources as that illusory figure's Qingquan rank. Also, all the mirror images that you condense during cultivation will be cancelled. Battle. How you perform will depend on your own performance. Along with this voice, the mirror images that Yi Xian had prepared earlier all disappeared. Yi Xian was speechless. If he had known this would happen, he would not have spent so much time creating these things. However, now that things had come to this, there was no need to care about it anymore. This illusory figure was the same as the previous illusory figure. It was impossible to tell what it looked like, only a silhouette. However, Yi Xian knew very well that this projection wasn't easy to deal with. Boom! Suddenly, the projection took the initiative to attack. Suddenly, a flame divine dragon pounced towards Yi Xian. Even though Yi Xian knew that all of this was illusory, that powerful aura and blazing aura still made him feel very uncomfortable. Flame divine dragon? Then, I'll duplicate your flame divine dragon. Yi Xian's eyes were fixed on the flame divine dragon. Meanwhile, the system had already begun its analysis. One by one, the virtual materials disappeared from Yi Xian's virtual Qingquan ring. QWPM moments later, with a wave of Yi Xian's hand, an identical flame divine dragon appeared. The two flame divine dragons collided in the air, and a powerful aura spread out. Yi Xian couldn't help but take a step back. However, this was only the beginning of the battle. Yi Xian's movements were extremely fast. A godslayer slowly appeared beside him. However, this wasn't enough. Yi Xian also wanted to mirror Wei Zhentian. This was because only a godslayer with Wei Zhentian would be able to unleash a powerful attack. A moment later, the two identical godslayer swords charged toward the phantom. The projection's reaction wasn't slow. In an instant, layers of defense were raised. However, the power of the Godslayer wasn't something that could be blocked by these ordinary shields. Boom, boom, boom. The shields were shattered. The two Godslayers pierced through the projection's body at the same time. Was he going to win just like that? Even Yi Xian couldn't believe it. Oh no! Yi Xian's figure moved and instantly disappeared from his original spot. As soon as he disappeared, a terrifying attack came at him. As it turned out, when Yi Xian was mirroring the Godslayer and Wei Zhentian, the projection wasn't idle either. It actually mirrored an identical version of itself. The projection was real. However, there was a difference between the primary and secondary. If the projection was destroyed, the primary would not be affected. However, if the primary disappeared, the projection would also disappear. This was a bit like an ordinary duplication mystique. Of course, the duplication mystique wasn't as powerful as the mirror image mystique. The projection possessed 100% of the same abilities as the primary body. Furthermore, it could have its own consciousness. In this way, the projection could be called an enhanced version of duplication. With the help of the system, Yixian could even mirror other people's mistakes and so on. Although this projection required Xiaoyao's resources to create. However, even so, it was still incomparably tempting. Yixian's reaction wasn't slow. His figure dodged continuously in the air. However, the projection stuck close to Yixian, making it difficult for Yixian to escape. Fortunately, the two Godslayers rushed back in time and started attacking the projection. Only then did Yixian break free. Damn it, I like to see how you're going to break out of this. This time, Yixian was going to mirror the 1,000 Beast Sword Servants. Yixian moved quickly. While the two Godslayers were delaying the enemy, Yixian quickly used his resources to construct the 1,000 Beast Sword Servants. Then, with Yixian's command, the 2,000 Beast Sword Servants activated their ultimate move, 1,000 Beast Advance. 2,000 God-level mounts appeared out of thin air. Moreover, the ones that appeared were only Platinum-level God-level mounts. There were close to 100 of them. Terrifying numbers, terrifying power. The super-strong person who created this mirror image fate had never thought that there would be a day when the person who succeeded in inheriting his legacy would be a person 100 times more powerful than him. Yes, he would never have thought that Yixian would be so powerful. This power didn't come from Yixian's realm. It came from the treasures and skills that Yixian possessed. These treasures and skills were simply too powerful. The 2,000 Beast Sword Attendants unleashed their ultimate moves and flattened the Phantom. Chapter 2189. When the last shadow disappeared, Yixian was automatically teleported out. Ding! Host's bloodline has been successfully strengthened. Host, please note that your bloodline has reached the highest level of strengthening. Host cannot continue to strengthen your bloodline before a breakthrough. Ding! Host's weakened state has ended. Host has regained his original divine power. Rank 1 Upper Heavenly God. Following the system's notification, Yixian was finally out. In his hand, he was holding a mirror-like treasure. It seemed that this was mirror fate. This was the thing that had trapped Yixian for so long. Yixian looked at the treasure in his hand, but did not say anything. A teleportation portal. Suddenly, Yixian saw a teleportation portal. To be honest, Yixian had seen countless teleportation portals. However, the one in front of him was undoubtedly the most familiar one. Outside the ruins of the fortress, there was still endless slaughter and endless remnant thoughts. He was now in the core area of the battlefield of the sovereigns. Originally, Yixian did not have much hope of leaving. At the very least, he did not expect to be able to leave so easily. However, this teleportation portal made Yixian extremely happy. Even Yixian did not know where this teleportation portal led to. Without any hesitation, Yixian stepped into the teleportation portal. However, a strange scene occurred. Suddenly, beams of light shot out from the teleportation portal and locked onto Yixian, as if automatically searching for something. Yixian was stunned and became more and more shocked. Could this be a directional memory teleportation portal? I did not expect such a thing to really exist. This teleportation portal can remember all teleportation activities within a restricted area. No matter where you enter, if you want to leave, you just have to step into any of the portals and you can leave. Yixian had heard of such a thing before. However, he had always thought that it was a legend. He did not expect it to be true. At this moment, in Mo Shanga, the Fifth Hall Master and everyone in the Fifth Hall were waiting silently. Today was the last day of the deadline. Suddenly, a faint light came from the teleportation portal. Didn't this light signify that someone was about to pass through the teleportation array? In an instant, everyone's spirits were lifted. Could it be that Yixian had returned? Light swirled around and a figure appeared. If it wasn't Yixian, then who else could it be? Good boy, I knew you wouldn't die. Tianjin Wang strode to Yixian's side and gave Yixian a fierce punch. However, there were tears in his eyes. What's wrong with you guys? Something seemed to be lightly stirred in Yixian's heart. Isn't it all because of you, kid? Half a year ago, everyone who was able to return had already returned, but you were nowhere to be seen. It's been more than half a year. Later on, the sect was unwilling to wait any longer, but it was my father who insisted on it. Furthermore, he used the resources of the Fifth Hall to support the teleportation array. In order to prevent the sect from closing, he brought us along to guard this place. Xian was shocked. He even felt his nose tingle. Some words were easy to say, but they weren't so easy to do. Suddenly, Xian laughed. Master, you're so good to your disciple. It seems like your disciple will have to work harder in the future so that he can take care of you when you're old. It was as if the first sentence was a joke, but only Xian himself knew what kind of weight these words held. If Xian had only felt a sense of belonging to the Fifth Hall before, then Xian had already treated the Fifth Hall as a second home. To Xian, his enemies had to be ruthlessly suppressed and destroyed. However, Xian would repay those who were good to him 100 times over, because Xian had the right to say such things. Xian's return surprised many people. Of course, Xian was a disciple of the Fifth Hall. The others were just surprised and didn't say much. Only the Fifth Hall held a grand celebration. However, before the celebration even began, Xian first received a voice transmission talisman from his master's wife. It's for you. It was delivered a few months ago. It's from an aunt's family. She claimed to be your maid and said that she had an urgent matter to inform you. In the end, you didn't come out, so I took care of it for you. Thank you, master's wife. Xian lightly smiled as he directly crushed the sound transmission talisman. It was indeed Fian's voice. However, Fian's report shocked Xian. Master Ku of Lingxian Pavilion asked me to tell you to be prepared. If nothing unexpected happens, there will be a huge change in Lingbo Lake in half a year. Moreover, they have no confidence in winning. Master Ku asked me to tell you that you must leave Lingbo Lake immediately. Otherwise, it will be difficult to guarantee your safety. The words were short, but Xian already understood what had happened. It could be said that, strictly speaking, Xian's trip to the Master God's battlefield this time was simply a waste of time. Apart from obtaining a mirror of unknown use, he had obtained a remarkable ability that required a large amount of resources to activate. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had suffered a loss. However, he did not expect that. As soon as he came out, there would be a huge change outside. Lingbo Lake. Was it the ancient sword intent? Xian had to obtain that item, even if Xian knew that it was incomparably dangerous. However, no matter how dangerous it was, could it be more dangerous than the Master God's battlefield? There, Xian could be said to have died once. Could the ancient sword intent be more powerful than the Master God's space? Master's wife, disciple wants to leave for a period of time to deal with some matters. Master's wife knows what you want to do. However, Master's wife forbids you from going. It's too dangerous there. You're not strong enough. Xian was slightly shocked. It was not strange that Master's wife could guess what he wanted to do. However, why was she forbidding him from going? Master's wife, disciple must go. This matter was caused by disciple. Disciple must take responsibility until the end. To be honest, Xian was very timid in the Fifth Hall. The reason was simple. He had something he was concerned about. Otherwise, he would not need to ask for Master's wife's permission. However, for Xian, concern was not a burden. Anyway, I don't agree. Even if you go to your master, it's useless. If I say that you're not allowed to go, then no one can let you leave. She was right. Master's wife's words were 100 times more effective than his master's. What should he do? Xian was conflicted. However, as soon as his master's wife left, he saw his master sneaking over to Xian like a thief. Master, what are you doing? Shoo, lower your voice. Do you want your master's wife to hear you? Here. Xian was stunned. He did not know what his master gave him. What are you looking at? Do you think we're all fools? That little girl called Fian has come to our Fifth Hall several times in the past few months. Moreover, do you think we don't know about such a big matter? Chapter 2190. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. I will, Master. Even if I find out, I'll say that I sneaked away. You know what's good for you. But remember, don't let your senior brother Wang know about this. That bastard wants to be a hero every day. He doesn't even know that this is a place where he can go. If he has half of your brain, I'll let him go too. All right, tell me, what did you get this time? It took you so long. Yi Xian was speechless. He really didn't know what to say. QWPM, however, Yi Xian didn't hide it. He handed the realm fate to the fifth palace master. Wow, it's this treasure. My God, you're good. Don't say anything. I want this. If you don't give it to me, I'll take it. F***CK. This treasure is a super good item to be used as a cultivation secret realm. I heard that it was lost a long time ago. I didn't expect you to get it. Yi Xian was speechless. You can't bully me like this. Master, do you know what this is? It's the realm fate. Do you think I'm stupid? Okay, go play somewhere else. I'm going to talk to my wife about how to use this realm fate to create a cultivation secret realm for the fifth palace. What else could Yi Xian say? This item was useless in Yi Xian's hands. He could only accept that his master took it away. However, he remembered that his master gave him a Qiankuan ring. He didn't know what it was. System, check if there's anything useful in this Qiankuan ring. If there's nothing useful, devour it. Yi Xian didn't pay much attention to it because he thought that his master wouldn't give him too many good things. Unfortunately, when the system notification sounded, he knew what his master had given him. Ding! The host has broken through. He is now a superior grade 5 heavenly god. What? He rose by 4 levels. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What's going on? System, what's in the Qiankuan ring? Ding! System notification. There are 1,372 different kinds of resources and treasures in the Qiankuan ring. There are 50 million divine gems in it. That's why the host rose by 4 levels. F***CK. Yi Xian reckoned that this upgrade was the most depressing one among the countless upgrades he had experienced. This was because Yi Xian could already guess what his master had given him. It was very likely that it was the treasury of the fifth hall. He had long heard that the fifth palace was relatively poor, so the treasury was directly stored in universe rings. From the looks of it, it was true. Furthermore, Yi Xian had swallowed it all in one gulp. Damn your grandpa. Yi Xian was extremely depressed. How was he going to explain this to his master? These were the entire assets of the fifth hall. In the end, they were swallowed up by Yi Xian. Why didn't Yi Xian take a second look just now? In fact, as Yi Xian's level increased, the amount of resources he needed to devour to level up increased. Moreover, the quality of the resources he needed was also very high. However, he had swallowed all the treasures of the fifth hall in one go. What could Yi Xian say? It seemed that he had to hide from his master for a period of time. Otherwise, if his master asked him for something one day and he couldn't take it out, then there would be trouble. That night, Yi Xian left a voice transmission talisman and slipped away. Of course, it wasn't a problem for the 6 elders of the fifth hall to discover him. However, everyone knew what Yi Xian wanted to do, so no one cared. How could they know that Yi Xian was in such a hurry to leave now? Not just because of the Lingbo Lake matter. After meeting up with Fian, Yi Xian realized just how dire the situation was. After Yi Xian left, the many experts led by Mo Shang's training camp couldn't do anything about the seal at all. Even Missing Moon couldn't break it. Instead, the demonized fishmen occupied the bridgehead. However, why did Yi Xian leave Mo Shang's training camp? Why did he hide? Everyone was well aware of this, so no one had the nerve to ask Yi Xian to break the seal. At the beginning, the so-called siege was just an excuse. The fundamental reason was that they couldn't open the seal. After mobilizing countless people, and under the joint efforts of dozens of seal masters led by Master Missing Moon, they finally succeeded in opening a gap half a year ago. But the situation inside left them incomparably stunned. In just half a year, most of the mermaids and fishmen on the island had been demonized, and the reason for the revival of the ancient sword intent was finally found out. It turned out that there was the corpse of an ancient divine beast on this small island. The ancient sword intent had fused with the corpse of this ancient divine beast and evolved into a terrifying existence that was half demon and half spirit, half human and half beast. Outside the island, there was an ancient restriction. No one knew what the restriction was used for, but it was able to temporarily suppress the monster. However, the demonized fishmen inside were not suppressed. The war had officially broken out 3 months ago. Several battles had already broken out around the entrance of the small bridge. Yixian and Fian were extremely fast. By the time they'd arrived just in time for a battle to break out. On one side were the demonized fishmen guarding the bridgehead, while on the other side were the disciples of various factions, including Imo Shang's training camp. Over 100 people were fighting in that small area. Fishmen and human disciples were constantly falling. However, not long after their deaths, the demonized fishmen only needed a wisp of black smoke to float over the island to revive them. There was no point in fighting such a battle because the enemy was an unkillable monster. Even if they killed them thousands of times, what was the point? I suggest we leave immediately. If this continues, what good will it do us besides increase the number of casualties? Yi Xiao. It was actually this guy. Yixian had just arrived outside the command center when he heard Yi Xiao's voice. Moreover, it was the voice that suggested retreat. What did you say? Seventh Prince, your Dark Knight Empire is far away. Do you think letting these demonized fishmen out won't affect you? What I want to tell you is that once these demonized fishmen come out, even your Dark Knight Empire won't have any peace. Everyone probably hasn't forgotten how the ancient sword intent swept through Imo Shang's 100 territories. If we leave now, then the tragedy from last time will repeat itself. That's right, I'm the same. We can't leave. If we do, the consequences will be unimaginable. We can only think of a way to destroy these demonized fishmen here. We can't let them spread out. Otherwise, the destruction this time will be even greater. Chapter 2191. It was the ninth prince's voice again. That fellow seems as if he won't be satisfied until they retreat. I wonder what benefits he'll get from making them retreat. Suddenly, Yixian's heart jerked. Benefits? Who will want to see the world fall into chaos the most? It's probably the Annihilation Organization. Could it be that the Annihilation Organization is behind this as well? After all, if it really was the Annihilation Organization, then it wouldn't take much effort to bribe the tiny Dark Knight Empire. When he thought up to here, Yixian walked forward with large strides and spoke loudly. We can't retreat. We can't allow these devilized fishmen to leave this island. Otherwise, it'll definitely be a calamity. Yixian, it's actually him. Didn't that fellow vanish for over a year? Why has he suddenly appeared again? What does he intend to do? Everyone discussed animatedly. It can't be, right? That fellow has advanced again. My God, he's actually already at the high-level heavenly god realm. His cultivation speed is simply too terrifying. Who says he isn't? That guy, every time I see him, he would increase his cultivation level. How exactly does he do it? Could it be that there's someone even more terrifying than him who can increase his cultivation level so quickly? As they watch Yixian walk over step by step, everyone consciously opened up a path for him. It was even to the extent that even those domain enlightened spirit gods subconsciously moved aside when they saw Yixian. The leveling speed that Yixian displayed was simply too terrifying. Perhaps Yixian was at the heavenly god realm when they met him this time, but perhaps Yixian's strength would surpass them the next time they met him. No matter who it was, they would instinctively maintain a certain level of respect towards such a genius who possessed boundless natural talent. Grandmaster Yi, what are you doing here? Grandmaster Moonless frowned as he gazed at Yixian. Looks like he seems to be aware of Yixian's other identity now. Yixian grinned at Grandmaster Moonless and spoke. Retreat? We definitely can't retreat. I can set up an absolute defense formation for you all to take care of the injured disciples. However, if we don't destroy this island, it will definitely cause an unnecessary catastrophe. Therefore, I suggest that we take advantage of the fact that these demonized fishmen are trapped and finish them off here. Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to speak here? Seeing that Yixian dared to ruin his plans, Yi Xiao was furious. However, Yixian couldn't even be bothered to look at him. I know that you are most worried about the demon fishman's unlimited resurrection ability. Leave this to me. I'll think of a way to set up a restriction so that the black gas can't enter the battle zone. After that, I'll deal with all the corpses of the fishmen. This way, the demon fishmen will become fewer and fewer. At that time, we will have a chance of winning. That's one way. However, Xian, can you set up a restriction like that for me? It had been a long time since Xian had set up a restriction in his room. Coupled with Grandmaster Moonless publicity, everyone knew that he was a restriction Grandmaster and was even more formidable than Grandmaster Moonless. Now that they heard Xian say this, they didn't have much doubt. However, it wasn't as if they hadn't thought of ways to stop the black gas, but they'd all failed. Thus, they were still a little conservative. Don't believe him. Why does he have to say something like that? It was still Yilishio's voice. Right now, Yilishio wanted nothing more than to kill Yixian. Unfortunately, he could only dream about it. Suddenly, Yixian turned and looked directly at Yilishio for the first time. However, his words only infuriated Yilishio. If you don't want to participate, you can scram. Yes, that was what Yixian had said. Yixian had already suspected that this guy had been bribed by the Annihilation Organization. Naturally, he wouldn't be polite. Unfortunately, he didn't have any proof. Otherwise, Yixian might have killed him. What did you say? Yilishio was so angry that he couldn't speak coherently. Unfortunately, Yixian had no intention of paying any attention to him. How about this? All of Ling Xian Court's restriction grandmasters will come with me. I'll think of something right now. All right, we'll listen to you. It might be difficult for Yixian to mobilize the others, but Yixian was still able to mobilize the people from Ling Xian Court. Let's go too. However, he hadn't expected that the restriction grandmasters from the other factions would all take the initiative to participate in Yixian's operation. Yixian didn't care about this. In any case, Yixian wasn't counting on them to do anything. To be honest, Yixian had his own plans. Otherwise, why would he suggest that he take care of all the corpses of the demonized fishmen? Yixian wouldn't miss out on such a good upgrade plan. Of course, the most important thing was to stop the demonized fishmen. Yixian led his people and left. Everyone had different thoughts about Yixian. For example, the people from Mo Shang training camp felt apologetic toward Yixian because of Lu Luo. Similarly apologetic were the factions like Bai Lu that had wronged Yixian in the past. In their hearts, Yixian had only left Mo Shang training camp because they'd been wronged. Now that Yixian had returned and was willing to take action, these people felt rather emotional. Yixian led his people and quickly arrived at the bridgehead. At this time, the bridgehead was occupied by hundreds of demonized fishmen, blocking the only way for the Allied forces to attack. It seemed that this bridge was the only way to reach the island. Perhaps some people would say that it was better to use it. However, there were restrictions on the island. It was impossible to fly over. Naturally, it was also impossible to fly out. Yixian carefully observed the fishman's direction. However, he asked the system in his heart, "System, do you have any ideas?" Ding! System notification. In view of the host's current situation, the system has provided two solutions. The first solution is for the host to continue cultivating restriction abilities. When the restriction abilities are strong enough, perhaps the host will be able to research a way to stop the black gas. Ding! The second solution is for the host to exchange for the corresponding special restriction from the system. F*CK. Yixian was depressed. This system, why didn't it just tell him to exchange for it? What research? How long would it take him to research it? Last time, the system had activated the exchange function. However, Yixian had never used it. After all, the system's exchange was very, very expensive. All right, system, help me choose a restriction that is suitable for the current situation. I want the most reasonable one. Otherwise, I can't afford it. Ding! System notification. The best restriction that the host can currently choose is the Demon Slayer restriction. Once this restriction is activated, it will be able to effectively destroy the demonic energy. Yixian nodded. He had the item, but the key was the price. Yixian didn't seem to have any resources to exchange for it. Ding! System notification. The host's resources are insufficient for exchange. The system has activated the exchange function. If the host is forced to exchange, the host can exchange one level for the right to use it once. Chapter 2192. Yi Xian frowned. He was going to cripple his own cultivation. But was there a better way? Moreover, even though he had to pay the price of one cultivation level, Yi Xian would be able to obtain the corpses of the demonized fishmen, so he wouldn't suffer a loss. All right, I'll buy Yi Xian's deal. All right, system. I'll use my cultivation level to exchange for the right to use the restrictions. Yi Xian gritted his teeth and stomped his foot as he made his decision. Then, his figure flashed as he started to set up restrictions. Quick, protect Grandmaster Yi. When Moonless saw that Yi Xian had actually started, he immediately shouted loudly. On the other hand, the others noticed Yi Xian's actions as well, so they naturally didn't hesitate. In next to no time, the battle erupted once more, and two high-grade domain enlightened spirit gods stood on guard by Yi Xian's side. Puffed. Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood. Of course, it wasn't because he was injured, but because of the repercussions of crippling his own cultivation. Did he really think that using his cultivation level to exchange for the right to use restrictions was such a simple matter? When had anyone ever seen someone cripple their own cultivation? Yi Xian could simply be called the first person to do so. Yi Xian felt as if his internal organs were about to rot, and his entire body was in extreme pain. Fuck. Motherfucker. In the future, I won't use my cultivation level to exchange for restrictions, even if I'm beaten to death. It hurts so much. Yi Xian wailed in his heart, but he didn't stop what he was doing. At this moment, practically everyone was watching Yi Xian's actions. They didn't know what kind of restrictions Yi Xian was setting up, but they saw Yi Xian's miserable appearance. Blood was constantly flowing from the corner of his mouth, but he didn't seem to have any intention of stopping what he was doing. He was constantly setting up restrictions, but he was constantly spitting out blood. In the end, blood was even flowing from Yi Xian's nose, ears, and even the corners of his eyes. Grandmaster Yi, don't force yourself if you can't do it. You must rest right now. One of the spiritual gods, standing behind Yi Xian, said with concern. QWPM at this moment. Who could refuse? Ha! Tower Lord 100 Buildings slapped himself in the face and even knelt on the ground. I, Bai Lu, was blind. I, Bai Lu, swear on my godhood that if I ever doubt Grandmaster Ye's actions again, I'm willing to shatter my godhood. What a vicious oath. However, this also showed Bai Lu's remorse. Bai Lu had finally apologized to Yi Xian, using such an extreme method to apologize. Bai Lu wasn't the only one. Many people wanted to slap themselves, but they weren't as bold as Bai Lu, so they held themselves back. For a person who was willing to cripple his own cultivation for the sake of the world, they actually suspected that he was a bad person. Such behavior was simply unforgivable. Yi Xian's level had dropped, and he was in a miserable state. That wasn't something that could be faked. That was something that really happened. System, didn't you say that it's just a level exchange? Why? Why is my realm dropping so quickly? Ding. System notification. Host, please take note. It's indeed a level exchange. However, since the host has crippled his own cultivation, he will naturally suffer serious damage. Host, please rest assured. After recuperating, the host will be able to recover. Before he made his move, Yi Xian's cultivation was at the upper 5th stage of the heavenly god realm. However, when he was halfway through setting up the devil-slaying restriction, Yi Xian's cultivation had already dropped to the middle 5th stage of the heavenly god realm. Moreover, the drop was still continuing. Yi Xian walked all the way, leaving behind a trail of blood behind him. Those trails of blood were like sharp swords, stabbing into everyone's hearts. When Yi Xian finally finished setting up the Demon Slayer seal, he was only left with the cultivation of a lower grade 3 heavenly god. Although he knew that he could recover, his miserable state was still so miserable. Grandmaster Yi, how are you? Are you all right? As soon as Yi Xian landed, countless people rushed over and asked with concern. I'm fine. You guys can take action now. That demonic chi can't do anything to the seal. Yi Xian, who was supported by Fian, said weakly. Wasn't he in such a miserable state for the sake of his current harvest? Of course, Yi Xian wouldn't miss this opportunity. All right, everyone, let's kill those monsters. The battle started again. However, just as Xian said, although demonic qi continued to surge over this time, once it reached the area where Xian had set up the seal, it would be killed immediately. Although the demonic fishman's strength was not bad, all the forces were focused on killing the enemy because of Xian. Therefore, those demonic fishmen were no match for them. In just half a day, hundreds of them were killed. However, from the small island, there were demonic fishmen constantly rushing out to join the battle. Therefore, for a while, the battle was still in a stalemate. Xian said that he still needed to set up an invincible seal to guard against the fishmen's attacks. Xian could do what he said. Therefore, after a short rest, he began to set up the invincible seal again. To be honest, Xian's actions had touched countless people. Every person who passed by Xian bowed respectfully to Xian to show their respect before leaving. Secondary professions, such as restriction master and weapon refiner, were originally respected existences. Moreover, Xian's talent in cultivation was also extremely astonishing. The title of number 1 on the genius list was not a joke. Naturally, there was no need to say how much room for growth such a powerful person had in the future. Therefore, at this moment, Xian had used his actions to conquer almost everyone here. Of course, it was almost. In fact, there were also people who hated Xian to the bone, because there were indeed people who were preparing to do something here. The Annihilation organization hidden in the dark would not let go of any opportunity to cause chaos in the world. Naturally, this time was no exception. Unfortunately, Xian's appearance had disrupted their plans. The people who cooperated with the Annihilation organization undoubtedly hated Xian for meddling in other people's business. In fact, a conspiracy against Xian was also being planned. This time, they wanted Xian's life. According to Xian's instructions, all the corpses of the demonized fishmen were delivered to him. Xian's reason was that he wanted to get rid of all future troubles. After all, no one would suspect him. Besides, the corpses of the demonized fishmen were probably useless to anyone other than Xian. Naturally, Xian was also enjoying this. Now, all he had to do was sit here and take a look from time to time. The corpses of the demonized fishmen would be delivered to him. Where else could he find such a good thing? Even if Xian wanted to participate in the battle, he would definitely be stopped. This was because Xian's miserable appearance had already frightened many people. In many people's hearts, Xian was most likely gravely injured this time. Therefore, the various factions continued to send over-healing elixirs. This made Xian a little embarrassed. Fortunately, under the double restriction of the Demon Slayer restriction and the Invincible restriction, the demonized fishmen were constantly being eliminated. Meanwhile, the various factions had basically no casualties. This was very good news. Chapter 2193. Ding! Congratulations to Host for recovering. Ding! Host has broken through. Host is now a superior tier 5 heavenly god. Has he finally recovered his strength? The corpses of the demonized fishmen continued to be delivered to Xian for Xian to deal with. Even so, Xian still had to wait for a long time before he could recover his original strength. It could be said that Xian felt that he had suffered a great loss by exchanging his level for the right to use the seals. Fortunately, he had finally recovered his strength. That brat is now heavily injured, and everyone's attention is on the demonized fishman. He only has a single maid by his side. Why don't we make our move tonight? That's right, we can't wait any longer. That brat actually dared to ruin our plans. No matter what, we can't let him continue to roam free. All right, then it's settled. Your Highness, I'll give you a chance to perform this time. I'm sure you know what to do. Don't worry, leave this to me. A group of people were secretly discussing something in a tent. So they were the ones who wanted to target Xian. So the seventh prince wasn't the only one who wanted to deal with Xian. This meant that this scheme wasn't as simple as it seemed. After the group dispersed, Yi Lixio called for his 4 protectors. After a brief discussion, they all left. Of course, Xian didn't know about this. His current task was very simple. Occasionally, he would check on the 2 seals. Other times, he would just sit and wait for the demonized fishmen's corpses to deliver themselves to him. In the God realm, the 10 suns alternated. Strictly speaking, night didn't exist. However, it was still divided into days and nights. Ding! System notice. Hostile intent detected. Host, please take note. Hostile intent? Yixian frowned slightly. At this moment, he was with Fian, inspecting the invincible seals to see if they were in good condition. The new round of battle had yet to begin, so it was very quiet. With the recovery of Yixian's strength and the fact that they were within the Alliance army, no one was worried about Yixian's safety. This was not the first time Yixian had only brought Fian along. In fact, according to Yixian's intentions, Flying Smoke didn't even need to come over. However, because of the incident last time, when Yixian was injured, she refused to leave Yixian's side, no matter what. Yixian couldn't possibly chase her away, so he had no choice but to agree. Upon hearing the system notification, Yixian stopped in his tracks and immediately released his divine telekinesis to check his surroundings. There was no one here. There didn't seem to be anyone suspicious. However, Yixian had complete trust in the system. Since the system said that there was hostility, then there must be someone nearby, and it must be an enemy. That brat seems to have discovered us. Yes, it's very likely. He was actually able to see through our disguises. That's not bad. However, only death awaits him. Now, QWPM swoosh. Swoosh. In the blink of an eye, 4 figures appeared around Yixian and Flying Smoke. However, even though the 4 of them had appeared, Yixian could only see them and not sense them. A special ability that could block the detection of divine telekinesis. Yixian was slightly shocked. System, check their cultivation levels. Ding. System notification. For people have been specified. They're respectively at the low level of the 6th grade, the low level of the 3rd grade, the low level of the 4th grade, and the high level of the 9th grade. What the fuck? Yixian was slightly stunned. 3 spiritual gods and a peak heavenly god. Are they intending to kill me? Who are you? What do you want? Yixian gazed at the 4 of them as he asked this question, and he'd already drawn God's Slayer. Little fellow, what do you think we want? You're courting death for daring to spoil our plans. Then, we'll fulfill your wish today. Haha, what a joke. Just the 4 of you? Even though Yixian was slightly nervous, his tone wouldn't show any weakness. Not to mention that he wasn't far from the campsite, so he believed that reinforcements would arrive very quickly if a battle really erupted. However, the words of those mysterious figures instantly shattered Yixian's hopes. Kid, you're still so arrogant when you're about to die. What? Do you think that someone will come to save you if you fight us? Ha! You're too naive. Do you think we didn't make any preparations when we chose this place to ambush you? Damn it. As soon as he heard this, Yixian knew that the matter wasn't so simple. System, check the surroundings. Ding. System notification. Chain restriction formation detected. Chain restriction? It's actually a chain restriction? A chain restriction was even more terrifying than an ordinary restriction, because a chain restriction referred to a series of restrictions that were used together. Not to mention its function, it would take a lot of time to crack it. And Yixian believed that these people wouldn't give him the time to crack it. Sure enough, at this moment, the 4 of them shouted without hesitation. Attack! This guy is a restriction grandmaster. Don't give him the time to crack the restriction. Kill! Shouts of killing suddenly sounded out as the 4 of them decisively charged towards Yixian. Domineering sword cut. Consecutive sword cut. Destruction of 10 barons. Devil trapping curse. The 4 of them used their killing moves as soon as they attacked. Once they attacked, the 4 of them used their full strength. Ding! Warning! Warning! The host is under attack by an unstoppable force. Ding! The host's life is under threat. The system automatically activates defense. Ding! A usable superpower has been detected. The invincible defense is activated. Bang! 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 With Yixian at the center, the entire ground was collapsing swiftly, and a mountain behind Yixian was even directly transformed into powder. However, this wasn't the thing that surprised Yixian the most. The thing that surprised Yixian the most was Fei Yan. At this moment, Fei Yan's wings flapped, and she'd actually vanished without a trace. Of course, Yi Xian couldn't even take care of himself right now, so he merely had the time to take a glance at Fei Yan. A formidable attack instantly erupted. However, the campsite that wasn't very far away didn't notice it at all. Under the concealment of the chain restriction, no one noticed that a life and death battle was actually occurring here. Oomph. That kid is probably dead this time, right? Even a peak low-level domain enlightened spirit god would be instantly annihilated by our joint attacks, let alone a mere kid at the heavenly god realm. He's probably dead. The four of us trained painstakingly in these four super divine abilities since we were young, and our tacit understanding with each other is so high. The might we instantly erupted with is already comparable to the attack of a mid-level domain enlightened spirit god. It would be strange if he didn't die. The four of them stopped what they were doing and looked indifferently at the ruins, as if they were certain that Yi Xian was dead for sure.